minutes talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrow.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Sir Keir Starmer vows to freeze energy bills if elected Prime Minister amid warnings of mass blackouts come winter.
A very good morning. 6 o'clock today on Monday the 15th of August. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and me, Rosie Wright.
Here's what's leading the news, and thank you for your company. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, will today announce plans to freeze household energy bills and implement an £8 billion windfall on oil companies if he's elected as Prime Minister.
Well, there are reports that power stations are preparing to shut down to ration energy supplies in an effort to avoid mass blackouts this winter.
A man's gone missing while swimming in the River Thames near Hampton Court. It follows a series of heatwave-related drowning incidents over the weekend.
And it's been a year since Afghanistan fell to Taliban rule. We're going to look at the fallout from the US withdrawal a year on.
You know what to do as per normal. GB Views at gbnews.uk. You can tweet at GB News as well. We look forward to hearing from you. The Labour Party will today announce a plan to freeze household energy bills and implement a windfall tax on energy companies.
Now, the proposals, well, they're going to attempt to tackle what the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, calls a national economic emergency amid reports that power stations are preparing to shut down this winter to conserve supplies.
Well, for more, let's speak to Conservative Political Campaign Director Peter Barnes. We welcome him to the studio today. Good to see you, Peter. So a lot of movement on this. We're going to hear much more about this today. What's your overall view about capping energy bills?
On the face of it, it often seems like a good idea. However, it's somewhat of a kind of plaster over a rather gaping wound. They kind of sound very attractive to many people, but realistically, in the long run, they make very little impact in the long run. If I look at what the director of the the Institute for Financial Studies said this morning, that a lot of Labour policies is based on illusion. What the Labour Party is going off right now is not necessarily how our situation is going to be further down the line.
It's currently quite popular. Front page of the Times.
Well, it would be popular, wouldn't it?
Well, 3 in 4 Tory voters, politically, this is difficult for the Conservatives, back Labour's energy plan.
Oh, yeah. You see, why is it difficult for the Conservatives? They're not in power. What does it matter what their energy plan is?
Yeah, that's very true. It's somewhat Keir Starmer can kind of promise whatever he likes right now, because he's not probably going to be Prime Minister if for some time, if the Labour Party do get into power. What this is actually going to do is put a lot of pressure on Liz and Rishi in the Tory race to be the next Prime Minister, to actually really hammer down on the details about what they want to do and how they're actually going to tackle this.
And?
Well, it's going to be a very interesting fight for them over the next couple of days, if not weeks, until we get to the end of the campaign. What we're going to look at now is realistically how Rishi and Liz are really going to flesh out their plans. We've seen a lot of kind of what I call boilerplate policies, a lot of kind of statements. We've not really seen a lot of detail, and I think that's what the pressure is now going to be on Lizzie and Rishi to really bring out that detail.
And just explain to us a little bit of kind of the architecture of how this is all working. Civil servants, presumably, are working up an action plan for all of these strategies so that whoever then becomes Prime Minister, first week of September, they can then action one of these plans as soon as possible.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's the way it really should be working, so that as soon as the new Prime Minister gets into number 10, what I really would want to see is them getting on with the job straight away. Go visit the Queen, form the government, and then get to work. That's realistically what the next Prime Minister has to do. It's not really a kind of want, it's more of a necessity now.
Now, I'd like to go to one of our viewers and listeners in Derbyshire, in Glossop, lovely part of the world, William Pickup. We say good morning to William. Good to see you, William.
Thank you. Good morning to you all.
Yeah. Now, Rosie was just bringing up a point there. She was saying that although this is a Labour proposal that we're talking about today, give us the detail, Rosie. You think this is going to be popular with people like William, who, as I understand, is a member of the Conservative Party?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah.
So, William, what do you make of the Labour Party's proposal, then, to freeze energy bills and effectively put a cap on the energy price cap so it can't go over £2,000?
I think Keir Starmer's actually nailed it. I mean, the problem that the Tories have at the moment is there's a void. There's a policy vacuum. It's completely understandable because, obviously, in the middle of a leadership election. But people are looking for help and they're looking for hope. And at the moment, they're not really being offered that. And I think freezing the price cap at the current levels demonstrates a high level of commitment to help everybody. And I think the levels of bills we're expecting in January, which are going to go up for the average house to over £5,000 from around £1,900, is catastrophic. And what Keir Starmer is doing, although he doesn't actually have to implement this policy, he's demonstrating he gets it.
Well, except, and we were just going through this here with Peter about the IFS and what they say about all of this. They say this is an illusion in the sense that it will reduce interest debt payments in the short term, but unless you maintain these kind of subsidies permanently, Peter, if I've got this right, you just store up trouble further down the line because eventually the bills will go up and inflation will go up as a result.
That's right. One of the biggest problems that there's not many people are talking about is it's actually the wholesale cost of energy that's actually increased. So whilst the cap is there to kind of protect consumers, it's not doing very much in terms of doing anything to fix the long-term problem, which is the price of wholesale energy.
Though, William, I think you will say that it's the short-term problem that you're more interested in. You're a retired civil servant. You're going to be on a fixed income then for the rest of your life. And you, for one, you're the sort of person that can't afford these huge fluctuations in your energy bills.
Yes, I mean, I can give you an example. A year last April, I was paying £140 a month direct debit, which had been pretty stable for decades. I've now been quoted today by Octopus Energy, who are a very good supplier, that I'm going to be paying on average over £500 a month from this winter.
And so where do you find the difference, my friend? If you're retired, where do you find that difference?
Well, I'm reasonably okay. I mean, it will basically soak up huge chunks of any spare capacity I've got. My wife was also a civil servant, so we're in a fortunate position of having 2 civil service pensions. But not everybody's in this position. I noticed that the Tories have announced that they're going to be paying pensioners an extra £300 a month winter fuel allowance, and they've suggested the £400 fuel help over winter. But really, when you're talking about the levels of increases that we're looking at, this is really small beer.
For you, as a member of the Conservative Party, do you feel as though the party that you support are handling this to the best of their capacity?
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's the most disastrous time to have a leadership election. I understand the reason why we've gone down this route, but nonetheless, it's just disastrous. I was at the Lee event that GB News ran last week, and it was an exceptionally good event. And I think Liz Truss probably gets it, but she's hamstrung. She can't come up with any policies. She's left this void that Keir Starmer is now trying to fill. And I think Peter's right. What are we going to do in 6 months' time? It could be inflationary. But when people are facing this level of crisis, they're not interested in 6 months' time. They want help today.
And that's fair enough, Peter, isn't it?
I couldn't agree more with that. Like, if you're one of the people who is desperately struggling, any other alternative is the most attractive to you. I couldn't agree more with William. I generally couldn't.
Right. So he also he said that Liz Truss is hamstrung on this. What do you think? What is her way out on this? I mean, I do bring this up that, what do Labour get out of this except they jockey for position? But, I mean, they can't actually enforce anything or implement anything. So the next best thing is that one of the Conservative leadership candidates will implement something.
Yeah, one thing I want to see from both candidates really is a little bit of honesty about the actual situation we find ourselves in. I want them to be a little bit more brutal and kind of explain to people where we actually are as a nation economically. It's not exactly that they've not been dishonest about it, but I think there's been a lot of kind of flashy policies and a little bit of kind of like, look, as William says, a little bit of a void in terms of actual policies, which will help everyday people on the ground. When it comes to filling up your car and, buying food every day. These are the things that actually matter to people. And unless the Conservatives really get to grips with sensible policies and, more importantly, practical and workable policies, the Conservatives could be very well booted out of office very soon.
Peter, thank you very much indeed. Conservative commentator Peter Barnes there. If you're going to be affected by this, get in touch with us the way William got in touch with us. It's gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can, that's the email address, or you can tweet us at gbnews as well. So final word then with you, William. I don't know where this leaves you, my friend, or how you look forward to winter, if at all. I mean, here we are, we're in the middle of a drought in the summer, and then we face more huge energy bills in the winter.
Yes, it's horrendous. I mean, I've been talking about this with my family and boring them to death with it since about last October, when it was clear then. This isn't a crisis that's happened overnight. It's been coming for about 10 months. And if I can work it out, the politicians should have been able to work it out and put something in place sooner. It's really a little bit too late. Liz Truss is going to have about 3 weeks to sort it. Let's see what she does.
You can pick up there a GB News viewer and listener from Glossop in Derbyshire.
Right,
thank you.
It is 11 minutes past 6. A pleasure to have your company this morning. And we're going to look back to a year ago today. It's 1 year since the Taliban took over Kabul as the US withdrew from Afghanistan. Now, the country's economy is in crisis, and according to the UN, 90% of the country's nearly 40 million people don't have enough to eat.
Well, let's speak to Jamal N. Jafar. Jamal is founder of the National Security Institute and a former Associate Counsel to President George W. Bush. Jamal, good morning to you.
Good morning, Eamonn.
Jamal, how do you mark, what is your feeling, Afghanistan withdrawal 1 year on?
I mean, it's a challenging day. Obviously, many years in the making. This 20-year conflict in Afghanistan came to an end, precipitous end, a year ago today. The U.S. left behind hundreds, if not over 1,000, American citizens, green card holders on the day of that withdrawal. Tens of thousands of Afghan allies. So, an important day for the U.S. to mark the end of that military operation. At the same time, very challenging day because of the people that were left behind and our allies that were left behind, and that we continue to try to get out of that country. And of course, the concern that the Taliban will permit Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups to reform there in Afghanistan remains a significant concern with the recent killing of Eamonn al-Zawahiri there in Kabul itself.
Yeah, there's many issues. Right centre of that, though, of course, has been the state that Afghanistan's in now, and many of the, it appears, empty promises that the Taliban made in terms particularly of the treatment of women. Can you give us an idea of what it's like for people living there? For some, life's improved, but for the majority, it hasn't.
No, Rosie, that's exactly right. I mean, the situation of women, religious minorities, and the like is disastrous, to say the least. Women have been barred from education past the age of 12. They're not allowed generally in public without a male escort, at least for some amount of distance. When they are in public, they're expected to be covered head to toe. Preferably, according to the Taliban, Ministry of Virtue, essentially the morality police, have determined that ideally that would be a burqa. So the situation of women is particularly challenging, but also women and ethnic minorities, and so.
Oh, we're having a problem. Let's see if we can get Jamil back on the programme.
Yeah, Jamil. Yeah, let's. You're back. Sorry, Jamil. We just briefly lost you. You were saying.
Apologies. I was just saying the situation of women and religious and ethnic minorities there in Afghanistan is very challenging. Women, obviously, over the age of 12 are not allowed to get a further education, and they are prevented from going out in public without a male escort. They're required to be covered head to toe. I mean, the situation of women in Afghanistan has taken a huge step back. And then, of course, you have groups like the Hazaras and other religious minorities there in Afghanistan who remain under significant pressure from the Taliban religious government.
We have a politician here who was in the running for the Conservative leadership. He's now dropped out. And he said that his name's Tom Tugendhat, and he's ex-military. And he said that our failure in Afghanistan emboldened Russia to invade Ukraine. Do you think there's a correlation?
Well, I think there's no doubt that the world was watching our precipitous withdrawal from Afghanistan. They saw our unwillingness to stay behind and help the allies that we had there. So certainly it could have led Russia to make a strategic miscalculation in Ukraine. It may lead China to make a strategic miscalculation in Taiwan. And so the world does watch when the U.S. Takes action. And unfortunately, situations like what happened in Afghanistan, the way we left, don't put us in the greatest light, both with our allies and our adversaries.
Let me ask you as well, just finally and briefly, is there anything, any conclusion, any benefit for the withdrawal that you can look back? What have we achieved? What is better as a result of the withdrawal? Anything?
Well, I mean, obviously there aren't American and allied troops there dying on the battlefield, although those numbers were fairly small by the time the withdrawal happened. And we're no longer spending that money that we were spending there. That being said, I think the situation overall for the people of Afghanistan and our allies is challenging at best.
Okay. Jamil, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed for staying up for us. We are thankful to you. Jamal N. Jafar is a defence commentator. He's a former associate counsel to President George W. Bush. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.
Right now it's 16 minutes past 6. You're with Breakfast on GB News. Let's bring you up to date with the other news stories making headlines today. And Salman Rushdie's son says his father has suffered life-changing injuries in that knife attack on Friday. But his son says his feisty and defiant sense of humour remains intact. The 75-year-old author has been taken off a ventilator after being stabbed at a literary event in New York State.
More than 20,000 migrants have crossed the channel in small boats so far this year. Government figures show 607 crossings were made on Saturday alone. A total of just over 28,000 people were recorded making the journey over the last year.
The UK is braced for 3 days of yellow weather warnings for thunderstorms after another spell of hot weather. The Met Office says there's a high risk of power cuts and flash flooding.
Well, with that, we'll head to the break. Coming up, after a series of water-related deaths over the weekend, we're going to be finding out what you should know before getting into reservoirs, rivers and the like. All that to come after the weather picture.
Got a more unsettled day as there'll be scattered heavy showers and thunderstorms developing across the country. Let's have a look at the details. By midday, the southwest of England's going to have a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be quite heavy and potentially thundery too. It's going to feel quite warm and humid. Across the southeast of England, it's going to be a largely dry day with plenty of hot and hazy sunshine. It won't be long before some scattered thunderstorms develop later on. There's going to be plenty of warm and hazy sunshine across South Wales this lunchtime, but also a scattering of heavy and potentially thundery showers. To the Midlands, and it's going to be hot and humid this lunchtime with plenty of hazy sunshine. There'll also be scattered showers around, some potentially quite heavy and thundery. Some places will stay dry altogether. It's a mixed picture this afternoon across northeast England. It's going to be warm and humid with some sunny spells and scattering showers. In Scotland now, and showers could merge into longer periods of rain across southern Scotland this afternoon. Some of that will be quite heavy at times. It's feeling cooler than it has over the weekend. In Northern Ireland now, and there'll be further thundery showers expected this afternoon, perhaps leading to some even localised flooding, spells of sunshine in between. Temperatures are lower than recent days, but feeling more humid. So thundery downpours will continue through the rest of the day with a Met Office yellow warning in force. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Eamonn and Rosie here, starting your day and your week on GB News, on TV, online and on radio.
Now, still to come on the programme at 6:45, we're going to be on your doorstep in the town known for its sea salt, Maldon in Essex, finding out about the issues that matter to you.
Nice day for it, and as the Prime Minister launches a campaign to tackle dementia in honour of Dame Barbara Windsor, Dr. Sarah will be here to tell you what you can do to reduce your risk. 7:15 talking those medical matters.
And please do get in touch with us this morning. We've already been talking about the Labour Party's proposals for how to stop our energy bills soaring. If you've got an idea or you think Starmer might be onto something, please do get in touch and let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk is our email, or you can tweet us too @gbnews.
Now, a man has gone missing in the River Thames. This is near Hampton Court Bridge. The incident comes as it's confirmed that at least 22 people have died in heatwave-related drownings since the 9th of July.
Well, joining us now is Claire Gauchi, the campaigns manager for water safety at the Canals and River Trust. Claire, thank you very much. And really tragic news that we're talking to you about. We think we understand the risks of open water swimming when it's hot. Where are we going wrong?
Well, firstly, it's such devastating news that these 22 people have lost their lives. So a heartfelt condolences to their families and friends who are going through this difficult time. I think it's understandable why people want to cool down on a hot day. It's incredibly hot at the moment. And when you see a stretch of water, it looks so inviting to step in. The difficult thing is people aren't prepared to get in. There are lots of risks under the water that you just can't see. First one being cold water shock, which is particularly difficult in reservoirs and big rivers. This means that if you're jumping in, the temperature of your body is so different from the temperature of the water that it can make your body do involuntary responses like taking a big gasp of, oh, that's cold. But if you're underwater when you're doing that, you're going to draw in a lot of water. That's just one of the things that can happen with it. Of course, as well, the cold water can paralyze your muscles and put you in a very, very difficult situation. But particularly in canals, there's things like reeds and plant life that can tangle around your limbs and make it very difficult for you to move or to get out. There are hidden objects. Sadly, things are thrown into canals like trolleys. And if you were to land on one, it would cause you a lot of problems. And not forgetting as well that canals particularly are routes for boats. That's where boats travel. They're not designed as swimming pools. So there could be some residue, oil or petrol left in the water. Therefore, that's very limited amounts, but it's really not the place to swim. So we're just asking people, if they want to cool down this summer, please Google an open water swimming club near them. Don't get in the canals and rivers in undesignated places to swim. You can't swim in canals anyway, it's prohibited, but please find a group that you can do it with safely and enjoy the waterway safely this summer.
Claire, I'm interested in that. Now, what is the difference between advising people not to do it and yet advising people to do it with a group that are into open water swimming? Because I can't get over the appetite there is for this amongst people I know, amongst people who are on Instagram, whatever I mean, listen, I'm a non-swimmer, so it rules me out anyway. I'm frightened of all sorts of water. I wouldn't go near it. But it just never ceases to amaze me that any stretch of open water seems to be fair game for people. We hear about the fatalities, but we're not really talking about the huge amounts of people who are prepared to take on the risk or don't see the risk.
Well, I think in that particular instance, a lot of people know about them, particularly in groups, in open water swimming groups. I myself was very lucky yesterday to be able to join an open water swimming group, and I went for a swim yesterday, but I was with a group, I had a safety chat, I had a float behind me, I had people looking out for me and checking I was okay the whole time I was there, and we went out for a set period of time. And I think that's different than people who just jumping in just for fun. Unfortunately, this summer we've seen a lot of young men and teenage boys jumping off bridges and using them as diving boards and jumping into canal locks and using them as swimming pools. These things aren't designed for those purposes. There are hidden things in locks that you just won't be able to see. And if you're not familiar with how a lock works, you won't know that there's a small platform near the lock gates called a sill, which you could land on. It could really hurt you. So I think open water swimming is great if you're doing it properly. So we just really ask people, find a club near you. There are lots of different websites out there. Beyond Swim, there's an open water swimming organisation. Go on those websites and find somewhere that's right for you, because you can do it safely. You can have a really good time. We know that open water swimming is great for mental health and for physical health, but we also know that being by water is just really restorative. And at the Canal and River Trust, we know that it can often be people's happy places, and we encourage people to come to the water, but just do it safely. And of course, if you don't want to get in, you can always go for a boat ride. You can try fishing lessons that we've got. There are lots of other ways to enjoy the water safely, but please just be careful when you're doing it.
And just really quickly, Claire, if we see someone that's got into trouble, what's the best course of action?
Yeah, thanks so much for mentioning that. So if you see somebody in the water who is struggling, please don't get in. Please don't get in, because it could be a rescue for you as well. So the best thing to do is to shout to the person to float on their back like a starfish. Then call 999 and ask for the fire service if you're inland, or the Coast Guard if you're at the coast. Then if you get into difficulty in the water, the best thing to do again is to float on your back. There's a fantastic campaign called Float to Live by the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, and it's just that, float on your back like a starfish. You might have to scull with your hands a little bit, but it gives you a chance to calm your breathing down. And then you can either swim to the shore or swim to the side of the river wherever you are, or shout for help.
Claire, thank you very much indeed, and I hope that's the last we've heard of fatalities this summer, and you've got the message out there. Claire Gauthier is the campaigns manager for water safety in Canals and River Trust. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gosh, I mean, swimming and me don't go together. I don't swim, but the appetite with people seems to be incredible. On my Instagram, people. You suddenly see people talking about who you wouldn't have thought. They love the idea of wild water swimming and, just being out there in the sea and whatever. And then there are two people I've met in the last 6 months, working with one and, working with two actually. And you get talking and they say they love swimming in the sea. They love swimming in reservoirs and they love doing this.
I was swimming in the sea yesterday.
Were you doing it naked?
Absolutely not,
but
no.
This is the point I was going to make. So these people love doing this, but they love doing it naked. So this brings me up to a number of points. Who would you trust to go naked swimming with, number one? And if you were doing it, you'd worry about people looking at you, but a lot of people feel really...
It must be on like a nudist beach or something, surely.
Well, I think there's safe areas, or there's areas they go to, but they go in groups. And they do it in the nuddy.
Oh my gosh, not for me. Definitely not for me. I was just sort of nostalgically thinking about my lovely swim yesterday, and you've really corrupted the memory.
All right, tell me about your lovely swim.
No, I mean, it was beautiful, but lots of people seemed to be making...
Where were you swimming?
In Devon. It was really, really gorgeous, but lots of people making some, it seems, crazy and unwise decisions. As we were sat on the beach, a family which had a toddler and maybe a 5-year-old, the toddler and the 5-year-old ran down to the water. It was really windy, and they had one of those mini inflatable boats. And the 5-year-old and the toddler got onto the inflatable boat. Why they had it in the sea, I had no idea, unsupervised by a parent. Got on, and straight away, the wind was taking them out to sea, and some stranger in the sea had stopped the boat for them while the mum ran down, and that was the end of their swimming trip. So you think that could have been a catastrophe in less than 2 minutes.
But it amazes me in this risk-adverse society. You know, they don't let kids do anything without being checked and whatever, and yet swimming in the sea or swimming in rivers seems to go unchecked. And yet you look at it and it's riddled with dangers. I mean, to me, if it wasn't in a swimming pool with lifeguards standing around with no surprises going to come your way, why would you want to do it? But a lot of people do want to do it. And look, if you are going to do it, just as Claire was saying there, just take all the necessary precautions. Do not be doing it on your own. Have someone around you that can help you if you're going to get into trouble. 6:30 the time. Let's do the papers right after the break. Don't go away.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We're just talking about a breaking news story here involving one of my friends. We're talking about the dangers of open water swimming, but my friend Rylan, the TV celebrity and presenter, basically on his Instagram account, I woke up this morning to see that his bedroom had been invaded by a long black snake with a white, it had a white stripe on its head. I mean, it was vicious looking, it was. And Rylan was standing top of his bed on his own, screaming and crying, and I have to say, swearing, as you would, wanting to know what to do with this. However, I had to go to work. There's nothing I could do about it.
He was very emotional, but he had to get the good Instagram content as well.
Yes, he got the good Instagram content. I don't
I'm
know
terrified,
what
but I must film this.
I don't know if he survived the night. You may laugh. How would you?
I would also be crying.
Yeah.
I don't know, who do you call in that situation?
How many snakes have you had in your bedroom? That's the question.
I really would be crying. Once I had just had a mouse in my bedroom and I was crying because I was so freaked out about it.
I'm freaked out about mice too. Do you know why I have this phobia about mice? Because when I was young, I had to put on a water boot one day. A Wellington boot, yeah. And my mother was saying, hurry up, put your boot on. And I'm pulling. I said, Mum, my foot won't go into it. She said, don't be stupid. And she pulled it off, and this black mouse jumped out. It could have been a rat.
No, don't. Because right now, there are 3 mouse traps in my kitchen.
Oh.
Because the other day, I mean, I really think
there's a song about that, isn't it?
Well, there was a mouse. The mouse actually had captured the kitchen because I was so frightened to go back in. So I had to get my neighbour to come in so I could retrieve some biscuits that I'd left in the kitchen because I was too scared to go in and get them. So I've surrendered control of the kitchen to one mouse.
I saw a mouse where under the stairs, right there, a little mouse with clogs on. Do you know the rest of this, Nigel?
No.
I tell you, it was a number one hit.
I'm afraid you'd ask me to step in.
Going clippity-clop on the stairs, right there. It was, honestly, it was a number one in the 60s. That was a song. Anyway, you may well have seen here, we've got Stephanie Boyce, President of the Law Society, Mr. Nigel Nelson, Political Editor of the Sunday People, and they have got the newspapers to go through, so you don't have to today. Nigel, we're going to start with you, this energy crisis, and explain to me, my friend, you being a political editor and whatever, so Starmer comes out, Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, comes out with this whole energy plan. But my point is, what difference does it make what he thinks, because he's not in government?
That's true. But the idea is to put some ideas to government. What's happening at the moment is that we've gone through various things. So the leadership contenders for the Tory party, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, have been hung up on tax cuts. Liz Truss talks about scrapping the national insurance rise and getting rid of the green levy. Neither of those things would touch the sides of the energy bills that people are facing. So then we go to the next stage and people are talking about, let's give huge handouts to the people who need it. And now the current idea, which I think is probably much more sensible, is that you have a price freeze. So what would happen now is that prices are frozen at the current rate. That means people won't be looking at bills of up to £5,000 next year. Keir Starmer has come up with one way of paying for this, but of course there are others. I mean, even the energy industry has been talking about how they might be able to do price freezes, and their idea is that you would take loans out to make up the shortfall from the extra money they have to spend on wholesale gas.
The reality is, when they're weighing up all these policies, the Conservative Party are never going to adopt Keir Starmer's strategy.
Well, they may indeed. I mean, I think that if you remember that when Keir Starmer proposed a windfall tax, the Conservatives said, "Oh no, we won't have anything like that." Now we have a £5 billion windfall tax on the oil and gas giants. So it is quite likely they would adopt that. And if we go along with the idea that freezes are better than handouts, then the government will have to say, yeah, OK, we'll do the same thing. Not good politics for the government, but that's the way they may have to go.
And in the meantime, Stephanie, we're looking at record profits for many of these firms.
I mean, unbelievable. Saudi Aramco has announced the biggest quarterly profit of any publicly listed company in history because of the surge in oil prices.
Absolutely. Some 48.4 billion profit, and that's from the month's end of June, or 3 months to the end of June. That's a 90% increase in the same period on the previous year. Currently worth 2.4 trillion, which is the value of Aramco on the Saudi Stock Exchange.
It's just, I mean, the word indecent just comes to mind straight away.
Well, absolutely. And lots of people will say that in the current cost of living crisis, as people are struggling to find money to meet their rise in energy cost and to put food on the table.
Aramco's haul almost equalled the combined profits of the 5 biggest Western oil companies during the same period. So BP, Shell, ExxonMobil and Chevron and Total Energies made a combined 51 billion in the second quarter. They broke their own profit records, but that shows you Aramco just how way out ahead they are on all of that. And then, of course, it's what Saudi Arabia does with all that money around the world, I suppose. After that, we've got to think about that too. Rail strikes. Now, my friend and colleague beside me here, Rosie Wright, did the right thing. I would have thought the wrong thing. Yesterday, she got on a train from Devon. Tell us about your experience.
It was a total nightmare. So I got on at Totnes to come back to London Paddington, not far from here. And the journey took just shy of an hour longer than it should have done.
Which was how long?
So then it was 3 hours, 45 minutes, about that. Loads of the stops we were supposed to visit, we then had to abandon. So passengers were very stressed.
And you were sitting on your bottom in a corridor?
Sitting on the floor, and then at Reading, the train sort of lots of people got off and you could then sit down, but that's sort of 20 minutes left of your journey. And that's because of the overhang of the strikes on Saturday. I was travelling on Sunday. So it wasn't even a day of strike action, and you think, my goodness, this is torturous, this journey. I don't want to get the train. I'm not going to do this weekend trip next time. And, you know, we've got questions about Mick Lynch in the papers today, Nigel, in the Times. It currently seems to be not at an end, these rail strikes.
No, absolutely. And they will carry on. I think that personally, I think they've got every right to withdraw their labour in pursuit of a wage claim. But there is no end in sight. It doesn't seem they're getting any closer to a settlement. I mean, the attack today from Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, on both Mick Lynch, the RMT leader, and Mick Whelan, the ASLEF leader, who causes the other load of strikes that have been disrupting us. Mick Lynch was talking about corrupt politicians in Ukraine and playing with Nazi imagery, while Mick Whelan was comparing Britain to 1930s Germany, Spain and Italy, where strikes were being banned. And Grant Shapps has sort of leapt in and said, hang on a sec, we don't want all this Kremlin propaganda going on. I think that, I rarely agree with Grant Shapps. I think that probably both MICs ought to stick to labour disputes and perhaps not get into international politics. That's what they're there for.
How do you see these rail strikes resolving?
I think there's going to be a settlement. And where we are at the moment, because of inflation going to 13%, I think that generally both in the public and the private sector, really we should be thinking about splitting the difference. So pay settlement should be in the region of 5-6%, maybe 7%. That would be, there would still be a real terms reduction in wages, but if you like, the employers and the employees both bear some of the pain for inflation.
OK, let's talk about grade inflation now, Stephanie. This is in the Daily Mail. This is to do with exam results. School leavers face double heartbreak this week as tens of thousands are expected to lose university places, then struggle to find replacements. Why is this?
Well, a combination of things. So teenagers will receive their A-level results this Thursday, and it's expected up to 60,000 are going to fall short of the predicted grades. And that's due to harsher marking this year compared to last year when teachers were marking the papers.
But the university places are offered on the basis of last year's results then, or the levels of last year's results. So they haven't adapted their expectations.
Well, there's a number of things that they say. They say because there is more demand this year because of those who deferred from last year.
Yes.
So there's an increase in demand from those who've deferred, but also that it's suggested that the places are more lucrative being offered to international students because they will pay more, almost double more in tuition fees, some 24,000 for a place compared to 9,250. I think it is for a UK-based student.
Mm-hmm. Could I ask you? Obviously, you went to university. You studied
twice.
To become the esteemed president of the Law Society. And when we first met, you were in studio and you were talking about barristers and solicitors and what they're being paid as regards of working for legal aid. Then these stories disappear. They go away. No one talks about them again. Has there been any progress?
Well, I mean, certainly from the profession's point of view, they certainly haven't disappeared. I think it's fair to say that given the current hiatus with government, that it would appear that it's gone away. But certainly in the background, we are still very much in negotiations and discussions with the government to see that the solicitor profession gets the bare minimum of 15%. That's criminal defence practitioners who are still leaving criminal defence work in drones because of affordability. And, of course, the cost of living crisis is not helping.
Are you any further down the line to achieving your aims?
We hope so. We are continuing to make the point. Our colleagues at the bar are continuing to make the point. And, of course, we will continue to speak to government and make the point. But also, when we talk about the cost of living crisis, one of the things that we are extremely concerned about is for those, as we see the pressure, is for those on their rights, not being able to access their rights, to afford to get that advice. And, of course, if we don't have the legal aid in place, that makes it even more harder for them.
Well, how you'll ever clear up that backlog, I do not know. I really do not know. How many tens of hundreds of thousands of cases are we talking about? It's a lot, isn't it?
Well, it's unfortunately, it's increasing. It's not decreasing.
It's not decreasing. Could I just throw it out to the panel here, to all of us? We just heard Stephanie talk about that university places will be more affordable to people around the world who are prepared to pay to get into British universities. And with the amount of jobs that are available, I throw it out there, do you really have to go to university to get a job nowadays?
No, I don't think you do. I think that this was something that Tony Blair brought in, and we ended up in a situation where 50% of people went to university. It often didn't suit them. I mean, there are some really brilliant apprenticeships around at the moment. And so depending on the job you want to do, I mean, Stephanie would have had to have gone to university to do the job that she does, but depending on what you want to do...
Although things are changing, because you can now do a solicitor apprenticeship.
Well, there you go.
Absolutely, yes, which is growing. One of the popular ways to get into the profession, because you avoid going to university and having the pressure of that debt.
What's your view on that?
So apprenticeships?
Yeah.
Absolutely. There have already been alternative routes getting into the profession, but with this increasing way of getting into the profession, absolutely, social mobility still remains an issue in this country.
Yeah.
And, of course, cost of living crisis is going to compound that. So, absolutely.
And you don't think there's a danger within your profession that people would look down their nose at someone who's done an apprenticeship as opposed to come there with a degree standard?
The solicitor profession, indeed the legal profession, must represent the community, the society it serves. And one of the things, in fact, we, the Law Society, launched our Social Mobility Hub only last week. And I sit on this socio-economic task force convened by government to look at social mobility in financial services and indeed the profession. We are changing in terms of the profession, becoming more diverse and more representative.
I like that, Stephanie. I do like that. Good. I like the whole idea of that. Absolutely brilliant.
Well, yeah, apprenticeship might be things that people are forced to look at because what's happened is grades will go down this year and there'll be fewer places at clearing. So many people might be looking either to take a year out before going to university and try again next year or to do something like an apprenticeship. Shall we look at the weather very quickly, if we can, Nigel? Front page of The Sun. We've had record-breaking temperatures over the last few weeks.
Certainly have.
We're just on the tail end of another heat wave. The rain is coming.
Yep, there's some cooling rain on its way with 3 days of downpours, according to The Sun. Now, the dampener, if you'll forgive the pun on this, is from the Met Office, who say this is actually the wrong sort of rain. Where the right sort of rain will actually seep into the ground and obviously help farmers and gardens and so on. This is the wrong sort of rain which causes flash floods. It'll come as a huge, quick downpour, and the ground is so hard that it'll just wash off and start causing flooding. So what we have to pray for now is the right sort of rain and slightly cooler temperatures.
My goodness, get hands together, it sounds like. It would be interesting to know from your perspective, the weather has become increasingly political over the last few weeks.
Yeah, but do you not think that's because we're now getting more and more attuned to climate change? I mean, climate change is a huge political issue. There are still climate change sceptics around. I mean, I used to be one myself years ago, but no longer. So, yes, I think that's the reason why it is political. And, of course, there's battles going on about what we pay for to go and do it. So, I mean, Liz Truss is talking about getting rid of the green levy, which, again, won't really help energy bills. But, yes, it is becoming much more political because of the cost.
And yet there is no other argument in town, really. You've got to look at it. I was listening to a report this morning which was talking about Arctic ice and how important it was to maintain Arctic ice during the summer period, or else we're all doomed. And apparently we've reached a tipping point in that. And I don't know about you guys, but I get increasingly depressed about the future. I mean, I'll probably not be there to see what happens, but when you think of young people today, the clock's ticking away on that front. It's quite depressing. Salman Rushdie, Stephanie, we just want to finish a quick word about him. Front page of the Express, they're saying he's off a ventilator and according to his son, Zaf, he's his usual feisty self.
Well, absolutely.
It's a long way to go, though, hasn't he?
Well, absolutely. It's reported that he was stabbed 12 times in various places around the body, and that he may lose his eye and indeed will have liver issues. So a long way to go. But of course, on the back of that, police are now probing the threat made to J.K. Rowling, who tweeted in support of Salman.
Mm-hmm. Later on in the programme, we're going to be discovering exactly what he did, which was so wrong, a lot of people say. But what is this satanic verses? What did he do that got him into so much trouble and got this fatwa placed upon him? And we're going to be talking to an expert about that later on in the programme. But for the moment, Stephanie Boyce, thank you very much indeed. Nigel Nelson, thank you. We look forward to seeing you guys in about 40 minutes' time.
Right now, it is 10 to 7, and it's time for On Your Doorstep.
So where we're going today is Maldon. Maldon is in Essex, and Maldon, Ellie Costello, is famous for salt. Good morning.
Good morning to you both, and you're absolutely right. Yes, Maldon salt, it can be found all over the world, and it's also an ancient riverside town. I'm going to show you the riverside a little bit later on, but tourists come from all over the country to see Maldon. But for now, we're here to talk to local people about issues that matter to them. We've come to a really quiet residential part of Maldon. I'm going to knock on this door here. This is number 3, this lovely grey. See what's behind. I hope nobody's asleep. Hello, you're live on TV and radio. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, so I'm Poppy, at events.
Lovely.
Would you like to come in?
Thank you so much. Yeah. Got a lovely quiet road.
It's very quiet.
So Poppy, how like living?
So I think 5th now, and before that we only live around the corner, so we're all very local.
So for people watching and listening all over the country, what is Maldon like? 'Cause it's famous for its salt, isn't it? But it's a lot more than that.
It's a lot more than that. We have the mud race, you have the prom. There's a lot quiet, very, very quiet, but it's quite nice, especially in the mornings. It's nice to go for a walk, and you just, no one else is around.
We're out in the country.
Very much so.
So tell me, what do you do for a living?
So I'm a wedding planner.
Okay. So how long have you been doing that for?
So about 2 years of my own business, and before then a lot of events, a lot of other bits and pieces.
But you're very young, aren't you? So when did you start your business?
About 2 years ago when I was 20. Wow. Yes, right in the middle of the pandemic.
So you started a wedding business at 20 years old in the middle of a pandemic. How was that?
It was okay, actually. I think I decided to start pretty much 1 or 2 days before we went into the lockdown. But I think it actually worked out in my favour, really, because no one was getting bookings, even if you'd been in the business for 10 years. So I sort of wasn't any better or worse off, and just built it up, connected with suppliers. Then when everyone did get bookings, I wasn't so much the newbie, really.
Yeah, fantastic. And what are you finding now then, post-COVID, and we're now entering a cost of living crisis? How is that impacting people's weddings? Are you seeing the budgets coming down?
So for me at the moment, the inquiries I've been getting are pretty much the same as what I have been getting before. But I am noticing people are a little bit more aware of their budgets. So it's a little bit less like, we'll put this, we'll put that. It's more, let's set our budget at the start, and then we'll sort of see how things go. And if we can increase it, great. If not, we stick to that budget.
Is that something that worries you with the cost of living crisis? I mean, we're talking about being in a Christmas. Is that something that worries you, running an events company? Events company.
So a little, I think it's on everyone's minds. I'm of the mindset, staying positive, that everyone still needs to get married. It's still a thing of weddings still take quite a lot of time to plan, and that's why a lot of people come to me. So that's not going to change in itself. Hopefully, people still will always get married. They'll need me or a planner.
Love it. And just finally, we haven't got it. What is the thing here? If you're getting married, what's the trend, the big fashionable thing that you're seeing everybody doing?
I mean, less of fashion, more people just want people. I think that's noticing as sort of a few years back. That is definitely a big thing. People always love flowers. I mean, that's always been around, it will always stay, but it's still a big thing that I'm seeing flowers everywhere, which, I mean, I'm all for.
People together, which perhaps is a post-COVID thing, isn't it?
So,
fantastic to see you much for joining us. Stay with taking you to a tree next. In the morning we'll be headlight.
Okay, Ellie. Next time we'll make sure your link is a bit better, as you were doing a lot of freezing there. So, but anyway, thank you. When you stay still, it works. It's when you move, the camera doesn't seem to like it. But thank you very much indeed, Ellie. Appreciate that. Lovely day there from Maldon in where is Maldon?
Near Essex.
Essex, that's
We got
right.
the gist of it, and we're back with Ellie in about an hour's time to meet some more residents and local business owners as well, to find out a little bit more on your doorstep.
Now, look, we were talking about open water swimming, and a lot of sad tales coming in, like John on this. He said, 1983, I lost my brother. He was 21 years of age. He and his friends went for a swim in Thorpe Park Lake in Surrey. Even though he had swimming medals, he got cramp in his legs and drowned. So please, people, take heed of the warnings of cold water. And Mark says that's how they train Royal Marines. They put them in cold water and then get them out. Train your children about the shocks of cold water on that. A lot of sad stories. Phil says, I was born in Skegness, spent my youth there. I was taught from early age, respect the sea, which is open water. I've never gone in open water unless I can feel the seabed under my feet.
I mean, front page of the Times, though, we've got people swimming in West Yorkshire, cooling off in the river, and there's loads of them there, and they'd already been advised not to swim there. You know, we'll hear the warnings. Lots of people will say, I don't want to live in a nanny state. I want to swim. It's going to be safe. It's the minority of people who get into trouble. But they really have. 22 people have lost their lives this summer getting into trouble in water. Do keep your views coming in. You can email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Is it really worth the risk? We'll take a break there. We'll have more on this energy bill crisis. We're going to be asking about Labour's plans and how they're going to tackle it after the weather picture for your Monday morning.
Got a more unsettled day as there'll be scattered heavy showers and thunderstorms developing across the country. Let's have a look at the details. By midday, the southwest of England's going to have a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be quite heavy and potentially thundery too. It's going to feel quite warm and humid. Across the southeast of England, it's going to be a largely dry day with plenty of hot and hazy sunshine. It won't be long before some scattered thunderstorms develop later on. There's going to be plenty of warm and hazy sunshine across South Wales this lunchtime, but also a scattering of heavy and potentially thundery showers. To the Midlands, and it's going to be hot and humid this lunchtime with plenty of hazy sunshine. There'll also be scattered showers around, some potentially quite heavy and thundery. Some places will stay dry altogether. It's a mixed picture this afternoon across northeast England. It's going to be warm and humid with some sunny spells and scattering showers. In Scotland now, and showers could merge into longer periods of rain across southern Scotland this afternoon. Some of that will be quite heavy at times. It's feeling cooler than it has over the weekend. In Northern Ireland now, and there'll be further thundery showers expected this afternoon, perhaps leading to some even localised flooding, spells of sunshine in between. Temperatures are lower than recent days, but feeling more humid. So thundery downpours will continue through the rest of the day with a Met Office yellow warning in force. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Labour promises a freeze on energy bills amid warnings of mass blackouts this winter.
Hello there, very good morning to you. The time is just after 7 o'clock. It's a Monday morning, the 15th of August. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Rosie Wright. Thank you for your company. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, will today announce plans to freeze household energy bills and implement an £8 billion windfall tax on oil companies if he's elected Prime Minister.
Now, all of this comes amid reports that power stations are preparing to shut down to ration energy supplies in an effort to avoid blackouts this winter.
The Prime Minister has launched a new national mission to tackle dementia and has pledged to double research funding to £160 million a year by 2024. We'll be discussing how dementia can affect us all on the programme.
And it's been a year since Afghanistan fell to Taliban rule. We'll take a look at the fallout from the American withdrawal 1 year on.
You can join any of our discussions, particularly on those strategies to save us money on our soaring energy bills. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email, or you can tweet us as well at gbnews.
Well, look, today the Labour Party is going to announce a plan to freeze household energy bills, to implement a windfall tax on energy providers as well.
The proposal will attempt to tackle what the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, calls a national economic emergency, amid reports, as we've just heard, that power stations are preparing to shut down this winter to conserve supplies.
Well, look, for more on this, let's go to Labour's energy, on Labour's energy plans. We're going to speak to the Shadow Financial Secretary, and that is James Murray. James, good morning to you.
Good morning.
James, what's the gaping hole that you want to fill here? What do you think is not being done that you guys are going to announce today and say, this makes sense, this is what we've got to do?
The plan that we're setting out today is one of a scale that we believe is absolutely essential to get people through what can only be described as an emergency situation that everyone is facing over the winter. As Keir is setting out this morning, it's a real national economic emergency. People are facing enormous increases in their bills, their energy bills, and the cost of living impacts that will have on them. And so what we're setting out is a plan here to freeze the energy price cap, to bring that real help to people over the winter, whilst at the same time using that time to really accelerate the investment in insulation of homes across the country to make sure that we have a solution for the long run too.
Forgive me, James, but you guys can suggest all you want, but you're not in power. Why would we take this seriously? I mean, you're 2 years away from being able to implement anything like that.
Well, I think if you look at the government at the moment, we've got a zombie government in number 10. We've got two Conservative leadership candidates who haven't got any plans of their own, which will really match the scale of the economic emergency that we're facing. And so what we're saying is, here is a plan. Here is a fully costed, fully funded plan that will provide real help to people over the winter, and we'll start putting that investment into insulation of homes across the country that's needed for the long term. This is what's really important about our plan, is that it's fully funded, fully costed. The government could adopt it straight away and implement it, and it would bring help to people, as people are really, I think, feeling, at least anxiety and in many cases despair and fear at the price rises which are coming down the line. This plan the government could adopt straight away, could implement, and it would help people across the winter ahead.
It certainly would help people across this winter, but the Institute for Fiscal Studies have said this is actually an illusion, because in the long term, they say that it will reduce interest debt payments in the short term, but unless you maintain these kind of subsidies permanently, it won't reduce them in the long run. Inflation will be higher later on. So is this sort of an emergency stopgap strategy? And have you thought about what to do and what position we might inherit then a year from now if this comes into force?
So I think the Institute for Fiscal Studies are making the point that we need to, if we bring down inflation in the short run, that helps with interest rates over the short run too. They're also making the point, rightly, that we need a long-term solution. And that's exactly what we're saying as well, which is that if we put in place these emergency measures to keep down energy bills over winter, we would also want to see investment in renewables, the insulation in homes across the country improved in the way that I set out, measures to keep inflation down in the medium and long run. All of these steps which we could take over the winter and going into next year would try and put us on a more stable footing in the long term. So, there has to be a long-term plan put in place, which is what we're saying should happen over the winter. But right now, there is an urgent emergency which we need to respond to, which the country needs to respond to, and which people need help with when they're facing energy bills going up by the astronomical amounts which are forecast for later this year.
Thank you very much indeed. James is the Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury. Thank you very much indeed. Now, you were saying that people like what Labour are saying.
Yeah, well, let's just take a look at the front page of The Times. 3 in 4 Tory voters back Labour's energy plan. Well, let's sort of unpack what we've just heard and find out more. Conservative political commentator Eamonn joins us in the studio. What you've just heard there, Labour sets out their proposals and it turns out Conservative voters quite like them.
Yes, precisely. Labour...
Not the ones watching this programme, I should say, but anyway, yes.
Well, the point is, let's look at the plan that Labour has set out. They're setting out a £29 billion plan to essentially freeze the energy price cap, which would benefit all voters. So, of course, all voters, including Conservative voters, are going to be pleased with a policy that essentially puts £1,000 back in their pockets that would have been taken by energy companies. But what the Conservative Party has to do in order to rebut this argument is say, look, there was some polling done by the Times and with YouGov, I think it was yesterday, which said 32% of people won't be able to afford the energy prices going up. So what the Conservatives need to do is they need to say, look, instead of giving money to everyone, we need to target it to those most in need.
Yeah, no, I get that, Albie, because, when they talk about this price cap, and it'll be whether it's 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, whatever it is, it cannot simply... Not everybody's energy usage is the same. You can't talk to a person who's got a 6-bedroom house and floodlights in their garden and driveway and things and say, we're going to peg you at 4,000 quid. So it's a bit misleading. When they talk about capping the rate, who are they talking about?
It's a general cap, so these figures that we're hearing are the general prices that people will be paying. So obviously there's going to be some variations. So people who use less energy will be paying less than that. People who use more energy will be paying more of that. It's an average, which is what they've calculated for the energy price cap.
OK. I just want to reflect, although you were looking at this national survey and whatever, and it seemed to be quite in favour of what Labour were saying, my point is, what does it matter what they're saying? They're not in power. They can't do anything. Why are they coming out with this?
Well, to be fair to Labour, it is the job of the opposition to be coming up with ideas against what the government is doing in order to jerk them into action. We saw that with the windfall tax earlier on this year. It seems that they've just reheated the same idea and just put it on steroids, really. They want to make a £29 billion plan out of an £8 billion windfall tax. He said it was fully costed. I don't know how many times in that interview.
Well,
I'd like to hear the details on that.
Some of the other details would then mean that £400 sort of uplift that we'd all get to pay our bills, we wouldn't have that anymore. This would be a different strategy in place. The reality is, Keir Starmer puts out this strategy. It appears popular. This surely is beneficial to all of us as voters because it puts more pressure on the Conservatives to sharpen up their ideas.
The Conservatives do need to sharpen up their ideas. I think it's only Rishi Sunak who came out on Friday with an idea that he wanted to fund up to £10 billion to help the most vulnerable through winter fuel payments, through universal credit uplifts, and to help sort of pensioners, rather than helping the entire population. So that's a third of what Labour are proposing in terms of cost. I'll be interested to see what Liz Truss has to say about this if and when she becomes Prime Minister.
Ken says, thanks very much for getting in touch with us, guys, this morning. How can Keir Starmer come out with a statement that he knows he cannot keep? If and when he gets voted in, he will probably find a note in the desk like the Tories did when they took office saying the cupboard's bare, there's no money left. John says, if Labour's plan sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. It's just kicking the can down the road and the cost will still have to be paid and a government will have to reimburse the energy companies. We'll have to see tax rises to cover this. So it's not as easy as it seems, and we heard that Fiscal Studies report there saying that it's inflationary as well.
One option, though, and we going to get your view on this, Tom's got in touch saying the idea Keir Starmer's put forward isn't his idea. The French government have implemented this already, and the French government and other European governments have already capped the amount that the price cap can rise by. So do you think the Conservative Party might just, as they did with the windfall tax, say, do you know what, maybe this isn't too much of a bad idea, we'll adopt it?
I believe the French government have adopted this policy and actually just put it onto the national debt, and Conservatives are all about sound money. Now, I think perhaps if Boris Johnson was still Prime Minister, I might expect, if he saw 3 in 4 Tory voters were in favour of this policy, that might happen eventually. But Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak seem to be wanting to take a completely different lane to Boris Johnson, not just going with what polls well, and actually more with what is more ideologically conservative.
Albie Amankona, thank you very much indeed. Albie is a political commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. The time, coming up to 12 minutes past 7 today, marks a year since the Taliban took over Kabul as the US withdrew from Afghanistan.
Now, the country's economy is in crisis. According to the UN, 90% of the country's population don't have enough to eat.
For more, we have in the studio, we're delighted to talk to former Afghan diplomat Naveed Nurmal. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
How do you view, here we are a year on, the world has moved on. What has happened in Afghanistan? How do you view today in this landmark anniversary?
On the 15th of August last year, I think, the United States troops withdrew from Afghanistan, and the president of the country fled the country, and that basically left a state shattered, a generation hopeless. Millions of people took refuge in different countries. Thousands other took illegal routes to basically leave the country, and also 1,000 others were evacuated. Girls above grade 6 could not go to school. They were banned to go to school. Media censored. A lot of people were tortured. Security forces who were working with the previous government, they were missing. Most of them were tortured, and we have reports that they have been killed. Some of them. So it was a nightmare for many of us, and it was. I could say that it was. The list goes on and on. If you look at it, as you said, more than 20 million people who are about 50% of the population are not having enough food to live with. So it is a disaster. Unfortunately, it's not only a political crisis for the country, but also a humanitarian crisis.
So, with the Taliban in power, has the rest of the world given up on you? Does the rest of the world feel it can do business with the Taliban?
What basically happened was that Afghanistan and the Afghan people, they were not only betrayed by its own state's people, it was also betrayed by the international community. We had partnership with different countries in the world, around the world, and they left us with no clearance on the future or any agreement with the Taliban. The Taliban are not engaging with the international community. They have hard lines. The international community have their lines. For example, they're not letting girls to go to school, and that's not going to open the doors for the international community to go and deal with them and get into an agreement with them. So,
but there are no repercussions for that. The Taliban promised that wouldn't be the case. They promised change. They promised they could govern. As you've just laid out, they're not doing that.
The problem is that the idea and the whitewashing of the Taliban that were happening during the past year, or even before they come to power, that was a flawed assumption. Those lobbyists who were saying that Taliban have changed, we know that they haven't changed, and it has been said quite many times that Taliban have not changed, because the moment you see a change in Taliban, you basically are taking the essence from them. And if they're changing, it means they are no more Taliban. So whatever you see today is the reality of the group. They are a disposable product of the proxy of a regional country, Pakistan, and have been trying to change, or they're changing. I think it's just a flawed assumption.
There is a theory that when the US and Britain pulled out of Afghanistan, that it emboldened the Russians to invade Ukraine. Do you think it sent out the wrong signal to the rest of the world?
Again, when you look at the United States' interest that they have been talking about in Afghanistan for many years, and to begin with coming to Afghanistan to fight terrorism, when they were talking with the Taliban in Qatar and Doha, they were saying that now we're going to get into an agreement with them because There are no more threats to the interests of the United States from Afghanistan, and Taliban have cut ties with Al-Qaeda. There's not going to be any threats. But 2 weeks ago, we find out that al-Zawahiri, the leader of Al-Qaeda, is said to be found in the house of the Minister of Interior of Taliban and being shot by a drone by the US. So this means that they have not cut ties. Again, they have not changed. They have their close ties with the Taliban, with the Al-Qaeda, and other terrorist groups. And that's going to be not a threat only to the US, but to the entire world. So to say that they were trying to embolden or have just an alert to the Russian, I think that doesn't help them in their interests or anyone in the region.
What is the future for your country? 1 year under Taliban rule.
At the moment, unfortunately, it looks very bleak and hopeless. When we're talking about the future of Afghans and Afghanistan, we're talking about 3 different groups of people. A group who left the country and are now trying to settle down in third countries. They're trying to find a life there. And another group is just living under oppression of Taliban. They have no option but to live it there. And the third group is they're in camps still, trying to find out a way to get out of the country. But what I can see is that there is a struggle, there is a fight against them. And to see that the women are taking the torch and standing at the forefront to fight this war for justice for Afghanistan is amazing. They have not shut their voices for the past 1 year, and they have been so brave and courageous to stand against what's happening against them and the oppression that the Taliban are having upon them. So there is an opportunity for the Taliban to engage. The international community must make sure that they should engage and pressure Taliban to agree to a settlement where everyone in Afghanistan, or all the people of Afghanistan, are involved. Otherwise, they're basically turning an opportunity into a threat, and that threat will not go long. It will just lead to their fall, and that's not going to be very long to see that their government will also fall. But the struggle will go on. It's real, and justice will prevail one day.
Naveed Normal, thank you very much indeed for giving us your analysis and telling us your story. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Afghanistan, 1 year after the American and British withdrawal.
Right now, it is 19 minutes past 7. Let's bring you up to date with the other stories making headlines today. And Salman Rushdie's son says his father has suffered life-changing injuries in a knife attack on Friday. But his son says his feisty and defiant sense of humour remains intact. The 75-year-old author has been taken off a ventilator after being stabbed at a literary event in New York State.
More than 20,000 migrants have crossed the channel in small boats so far this year. Government figures show 607 crossings were made just on Saturday. A total of over 28,000 people were recorded making the journey last year.
The UK is preparing for 3 days of yellow weather warnings, not for heat, for thunderstorms after what has been an extraordinary spell of hot weather. The Met Office says there's a high risk of power cuts and flash flooding.
There's going to be a new campaign to tackle dementia by doubling research funding by 2024.
The Dame Barbara Windsor Dementia Mission, in memory, of course, of the late actress, aims to reach £160 million in funding per year by 2024.
In the studio now, Dr. Sarah Kayat to talk about this condition and what, I suppose, Sarah, any of us can do to reduce our risk of it. Can we actually?
The thing with dementia is that it's actually an umbrella term that it encompasses a group of symptoms rather than one single disease with one single cause. So, for example, there are 200 different types of dementia, with Alzheimer's and vascular disease dementia being the two most common. But it means they're caused by so many different things, and therefore our ability to treat and reduce our risk can be difficult depending on the type of dementia you have. We do know that there are certain risk factors for the Alzheimer's, for example, increasing age, family history, untreated depression. We know that there are certain lifestyle factors that can affect cardiovascular disease that we also know can affect our risk of developing it. So I think, it is a matter of managing those things, but also managing our lifestyle that can affect those factors.
So what are some of those lifestyle things? Sleep, presumably, diet, exercise?
Yeah, it might sound all a bit boring, but, smoking, so stop smoking, healthy diet, healthy lifestyle in terms of exercise, managing depression, managing low moods and our stress, as you say, sleep. Although, interestingly, sleep, it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation because we know that dementia can cause problems with sleep, and we also believe that there may be sleep linked to causing dementia. We don't know which one started which.
There is no cure for dementia, is there? There's just management of it. Explain to us how, if you know someone, which many of us do, relatives, friends, they get dementia, what is the typical treatment course?
Sure. So, as I say, because there are different types of dementia, the treatments would be different. But because most people will suffer with Alzheimer's, let's kind of go with that one as the main one. So yes, it is about managing the symptoms. The most common medications that people are put on are things like donepezil or memantine, and those help temporarily reduce how the progression of dementia goes on and helps improve brain function temporarily.
And how much of an impact does it have on the progression of the disease or the dementia, depending on how quickly you notice it?
We do know that those that are diagnosed early in their journey and are offered the right support and treatment early do have a better prognosis in terms of kind of decline of the function. But you know what, with dementia, it's because we understand so little about how Alzheimer's, for example, is caused. We notice that some people progress far quicker than others, and we still don't know why. And that's why funding into this research is so important.
The funding is going to be announced later on today and should be really exciting to all those researchers and just the field in general. Dr. Sarah, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks, Sarah. Look, let's hit the break there. When we come back, we're going through the big sports stories, including the battle at Stamford Bridge yesterday, with Paul Coit. That to come after your weather for the day ahead.
Got a more unsettled day as there'll be scattered heavy showers and thunderstorms developing across the country. Let's have a look at the details. By midday, the southwest of England's going to have a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be quite heavy and potentially thundery too. It's going to feel quite warm and humid. Across the southeast of England, it's going to be a largely dry day with plenty of hot and hazy sunshine. It won't be long before some scattered thunderstorms develop later on. There's going to be plenty of warm and hazy sunshine across South Wales this lunchtime, but also a scattering of heavy and potentially thundery showers. To the Midlands, and it's going to be hot and humid this lunchtime with plenty of hazy sunshine. There'll also be scattered showers around, some potentially quite heavy and thundery. Some places will stay dry altogether. It's a mixed picture this afternoon across northeast England. It's going to be warm and humid with some sunny spells and scattering showers. In Scotland now, and showers could merge into longer periods of rain across southern Scotland this afternoon. Some of that will be quite heavy at times. It's feeling cooler than it has over the weekend. In Northern Ireland now, and there'll be further thundery showers expected this afternoon, perhaps leading to some even localised flooding, spells of sunshine in between. Temperatures are lower than recent days, but feeling more humid. So thundery downpours will continue through the rest of the day with a Met Office yellow warning in force. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Before we talk about yesterday's sporting action and the weekend sporting action, look at the back pages. This is how they're shaping up today. Daily Mail leads with hot weather, hot tempers and hot Spur, as Chelsea played a 2-2 draw against Spurs at the Stamford Bridge yesterday in their London derby. The Mirror has a story on Manchester United hitting rock bottom. Their manager, Ten Hag, and his side losing 4-0 to Brentford. And it's no iron fist for Anthony Joshua. This is the back page of the Star. The fighter says he plans to change tactic in his rematch against Alexander Usyk. So that's it. Paul Coyte, who was at the Battle of Stamford Bridge yesterday as a Tottenham supporter, with his view on that one.
I've got a bit of a sore throat. I kind of. Do you shout a lot at the games when you watch it? Well, let's start with Saturday.
I'm a public figure. I can't.
I know you are.
I have to bite my lip quite a lot.
Really? So
I do have to bite my lip.
So you don't. Surely. Well, what about when you watch at home?
Oh, well,
you're a shouter then.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Spurs was. It was a heck of a game against Chelsea. I think a lot of Chelsea fans that I'd spoken to would say, you know what, we'll be happy with the draw. But when you saw the game, I thought Chelsea were terrific. I thought Chelsea were really good. Spurs, you know, until a change was made in the formation, then they started playing better after that. But it was full of controversy. Look, you can see all of this that's going on there. There was hair pulling involved. Chelsea are very, very unhappy about both of the goals that Spurs scored.
Such a late equaliser as well from Harry Kane.
But that's the thing, is that there's nothing like a late equaliser or a late goal when it goes your way. I mean, it's nothing more sickening than if it goes the other way, but Chelsea probably deserve the 3 points. I honestly can say that.
Well, you're happy to gone away with those. And then there was handbags on the touchline between the two managers.
Thomas Tuchel and also Antonio Conte as well. It was a handshake. It was a very interesting handshake. I don't know if you saw that.
Who didn't let go?
I think it. I
thought Tuchel held on.
Well, if we could demonstrate, there was the handshake there.
Yeah.
So it was always a quick one. Look the other way, and as Antonio Conte went, we're going to strip the willow in a minute.
Tuchel kept.
That's it.
Conte's hand.
That's right. So he pulled as if to say, "Well, you've got to look at me in the eye when shake hands." I mean, when do you ever see managers do that? So then it all started kicking off. Then everybody. I mean, I don't know about you, and you get
it was
people.
Great drama.
I think it's great drama. People will say, "Well, you don't want to see this on a," but you know, this is not the. I love it. It's love it because it shows the passion. I love Tuchel as well because he shows passion, and I love Conte because he's the same. I'm not a fan of a manager. It's the old style, Alf Ramsey, 1966, the World Cup. They just sit there like that and not react. I love to see a reaction, and fans love it as well.
And they've been loving it for 30 years of the Premier League. 30
years of the Premier League. It's the anniversary today. So I thought it may be a good thing to be able to say that the people, actually, the different winners over the years. So 13 times Manchester United, by far and away, more times than anybody else.
By far. I just want to say by far and away.
Yes.
Sorry, do I have to say that again? Sorry, I was trying to just look down the lens of the camera and say that by far and away, because there are those who mock and doubt Manchester United's credentials these days.
Although
easy to do.
Although far and away.
13, by far and away, the most winners of the Premier League.
And could I say that they're far and away from winning the Premier League again in the near future? Although, but
let's go through the pretenders. City have won it 6 times. Chelsea have won it 5 times. Arsenal 3 times. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Blackburn 1. Leicester 1. Liverpool 1.
Liverpool 1. There we are.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. So 30 years ago, and it's the anniversary of the Premier League, because it was going to... It changed everything. And if we look at the Premier League and what it is as a... I hate to use that word product, but these days, the whole world watches the Premier League. Wherever you go around the world, it's on everywhere, and it's by far the most watched sporting event now. And so anyway, happy birthday to the Premier League.
OK, there's no denying that the Man United then and the Man United now, 2 different teams. A lot of people would say the club is different as well. I was at Brentford on Saturday.
Oh, dear.
4 down within 25 minutes. Couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Well, I mean, after that, it went OK. At least it was 0-0 for that. I'm just trying to look at the bright side. It was an abject performance. They started the season the way they ended last season. Erik ten Hag has come in. What he can do, I don't know whether he's actually looking at this and thinking, what can I do? I need more signings. We look at players, we look at attitude. It's almost like a clean sweep that's needed. It's just a complete mess. And how bad it's going to go.
Well, I was convinced in days of old, goalkeepers used to wear caps. People like Ray Clements or whatever, they would wear caps. Now goalkeepers you never see a goalkeeper wearing a cap, right? And the sun was right in Grobbler's eyes. I mean, it was really low in the sky. What's his name?
De Gea.
De Gea's eyes, sorry, forgive me. The sun was right in De Gea's eyes. And that's my excuse. I thought, why don't they wear caps these days?
I don't know. Because the peak would do that. I don't know whether the stands were... But anyway, so that's goal number 1. What about goal number 2, 3 and 4?
Yeah.
No, the sun's in his eyes.
Yeah.
Because obviously, because in the second half, nothing happened.
But
they were at the other end.
You were in shade in the other end, the second one as well.
I think there's a lot of shade thrown around here, but it's probably going to be at Manchester United.
Yeah.
Liverpool next. I mean, it's
on Monday night.
Liverpool a week today. It's just such a worry, and nobody would actually look at that and think, Manchester United stayed a prayer against Liverpool unless seriously things change. I do think that Erik ten Hag will go, and I think that Pochettino, I think it will happen. I really do. I know it's early days, but there seems to be someone has to go. Looking at, let's say, 3 months down the line, nothing happens. Do you keep the same manager? I mean, he's the man that's supposed to come in and change things. It would be sensible to keep him, but whether it actually is, the plug's going to be pulled, and then maybe someone like Mauricio Pochettino comes in.
Who's still on the market.
Still on the market. But the thing is, the problem is what we're seeing on the pitch at the moment, as you well know. So, not looking good at the moment, at all.
Anything good to tell me? Anything?
I do have something good to tell you.
Yeah.
Alicia McColgan, who I'm hoping that we will have on the show with us later on in the week. 10,000 metres, won the Commonwealth Games. It's the European Championships on at the moment.
Is she related to Liz McColgan?
It's a daughter.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
okay,
daughter.
Right.
So she runs the same event years on, and
Amazing.
she actually broke her mum's 10,000 metre record recently as well. Scottish record.
She looks like her mum, actually.
She does. Very tall. Very tall. 10,000 metres in Munich in the European Championships. She runs tonight at 8:48. I'd like to keep it exact. That's the time the race goes, because there's been so much athletics. You know, we've had the World Championships, Commonwealth, now the European Championships. And I'm just a fan of the athletics going back to the old days of the Cohen Ovitz, etc. It doesn't get the coverage that it used to, which is a shame because there's so much. But she runs tonight, and there's some other good runners.
Oh, we'll look forward to that.
So hopefully we'll get on the show later on.
Good man, Paul. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Paul Coit there. Thank you. We'll take a break there after that. We're going to go through the newspapers. We've got Nigel Nelson and Stephanie Boyce. All we need is you after this.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Here are our newspaper reviewers once again. Nigel Nelson, political editor of the Sunday People. Stephanie Boyce, who's president of the Law Society. And I have to reflect, don't mess it up this time, because last time people loved the both of you. Graham says, what a great review this morning with Nigel and Stephanie. I have always enjoyed Nigel's views, and it was a pleasure listening to Stephanie and her new ideas on solicitors' apprenticeships. Great show, very well done. Apprenticeships, says Barry, are the way to go, because the people learn under expert tuition, then they have learned properly. They also have a job with a wage rather than university, and a debt, which they carry for many years, and that can't be the right way to go. But so you were very keen to get that message across, and that's about social mobility and diversity, which is very good. But most of all, Nigel, Anna says, Dear Eamonn, thank you for reminding me of a windmill in old Amsterdam.
That's because an hour ago, Eamonn treated us to a little song, didn't you?
I saw a mouse where under the stairs, right there, a little mouse with clogs on, and I declare, going, you don't even know.
I can't remember, no.
Clippity-clop on the stairs, right there. But that was in tribute to your little mouse.
It was.
That you were doing. So, but anyway, so there we are. It's called A Windmill in Old Amsterdam, and you doubted me. It was a chart topper in the 60s.
But Anna's written her own version. Thank you very much for this.
Do you want to sing this one?
I'm not going to sing it, but I could say it. Would you like to sing it?
No, I don't want to sing it. No, you go.
A network with truth and all sorts of views in.
But you are a singer. You are a singer, aren't you?
Not right now, I'm a singer. They break all taboos so we don't get the blues. Aren't we lucky mice to have dear GB News?
There you are. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, viewers and listeners, for all of that. Let's get into the review. OK. And we're going to begin with you, Nigel. 2/3 of desks are empty. Staff stay at home most of the week, according to The Times, page 19.
Yes, and this is sort of should actually inform Jacob Rees-Mogg, who wants all these civil servants to get back to work, because this is an international study, and so it's looking at 13 countries and how people are going back to work since the pandemic, or rather not going back to the office anyway. So the average in these countries is that people spend 1.4 days a week actually in offices, and the rest of it is from working from home. And the report is saying there's been
in this country. This country, did you say?
This is international, 13 countries. In this country, I think the figures are something like 1 in 5 people worked from home before the pandemic. Now we're approaching 40% of people are working from home. I mean, it just seems to me that there are certain jobs you can do from home and certain you can't. I mean, you and Rosie could not do your job from home.
I'd love to.
Well, we'll all come round and we'll do it from there.
Yeah, it'd be nice just to be sitting in the office or something with a camera.
Is this good news Or is it concerning? Because it feels as though the argument against it is how can you do the same level of work if you're not face-to-face with people?
Well, I mean, I actually think it is good news. If you've got flexible working, so for instance, that I used to go in 5 days a week. I now go to the House of Commons 2 to 3 days a week because politics is a contact sport. I need to actually speak to people. But if I've got a day's writing to do, there is no point sitting in my Commons office not talking to anyone.
Yeah.
I might as well stay at home, avoid the 3-hour commute and have extra time. I find it more efficient to do it that way flexibly.
Yeah. Commute is the most awful thing. I mean, it really is the biggest time waster in anybody's life.
That's right,
really,
isn't
when
it? Yeah,
you think about it. So there we go. Stephanie, the civil service, this is the Financial Times, and civil servants ordered to vet guest speakers on social media.
Well, absolutely. So Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg appears to be at it, talking about the fact that if guest speakers are going to be invited in to speak, their social media needs to be trawled, going back for social media posts going back 5 years or so in search of potentially problematic or controversial material that may contravene civil service values. And of course, Deputy Labour leader Angela Rayner has said it is a misuse of due diligence rules.
Well, what do you think?
Well, I think it's interesting that for guest speakers, I would hope that the civil servants involved could use common sense to vet their speakers. So perhaps the detail, it's all in the detail that perhaps isn't there as to why he thinks, Jacob Rees-Mogg thinks that this is necessary.
It's a huge administrative task to go through someone's 5 years' worth of social media. If you're a prolific tweeter, that could be an extremely long job.
Well, absolutely. And who's going to do it? And at whose cost?
Right, let's go to the Mirror, page 2, and they're worried about bus routes. Why is that, Nigel?
That's because the bus recovery grant is coming to an end. Now, this was the 200 million that the government gave to the bus companies to keep services running during the pandemic. And that runs out on October the 5th. And a number of operators are now talking about either trimming back services or actually cutting them. So the Mirror quotes one West Yorkshire firm. They plan to act 26 services. In Manchester, another 33 would go. And what the bus companies are asking for is they want more money to keep things working. I mean, I can understand from the operator's point of view, there are services which are not profitable. But however, buses should be a public service. And it does seem to me that public services should be in public ownership because that's the way to keep them going.
Well, it seems quite obvious. Is it a service or is it a business?
Well, exactly that. And you know, I mean, I live in a rural area. We have very few buses around, so most people need a car. That can't be the most efficient use of fuel if we're all running around in cars where we could, with the right bus services, catch one bus.
It's questions like just being able to get the bus into town, which make the argument of the Conservatives say they're going to level up the country look quite acute.
Well, exactly. I mean, what you need the transport links to work throughout the entire country. I mean, that's what levelling up should be about.
It's basic, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it should be. But I think the difficulty is that if you run public services based on profit, you're never going to get a good public service.
Now, if we go to the Daily Mail, their concern is house prices, Stephanie. Why is that?
Well, absolutely. So the average price for a house in the UK has fallen for the first time this year. So the average asking price is dropped by 1.3% from 4,795 to 365,173 in August. And they say that the decline is a result of seasonal lull rather than interest rates, rising interest rates or the cost of living crisis.
So it's just the fact that the market moves slower in summer?
Potentially, because in August, because we go on holiday, by the looks of it.
The housing market, I mean, it becomes quite relentless, the number of stories we have about this saying, you know, there might be this sort of drop coming maybe at the beginning of next year. Nigel, how much do you take those headlines and say, actually, maybe there is a point where the housing market just can't sustain this growth that we've seen?
Well, I mean, I think that we are heading for a dip. I mean, what's been curious is how resilient the housing market has been over the last year or so. I mean, one reason given by estate agents was that people were rushing to beat the interest rate increases, and now that's come in and mortgages are more expensive. Fewer people will move, so there will be a dip. But certainly, it's been pretty buoyant ever since the pandemic ended.
Yeah. We mark 1 year since the Western withdrawal from Afghanistan, and I want both your views on this one. Nigel, with you first of all. Afghan girls defy the Taliban by attending secret schools.
Yes, I mean, there's a number in Kabul because the Taliban have temporarily banned them from going to school. There's no sign that they're actually going to lift the ban. So that they even have to hide pencils, pens and notebooks before if they're on their way to school, because they get punished if they're caught with them. And I mean, I think it's one of the great tragedies of Afghanistan a year on, that also it doesn't make a great deal of sense. That one of the points some of these girls have made is that those who want to be doctors can't be doctors because they can't get an education if the Taliban ban it. And yet the Taliban insists that women are treated by women doctors. So the whole thing just doesn't make a great deal of sense.
It doesn't add up.
Yeah.
And I'll go back, Stephanie, to your advocacy of apprenticeships as well. It must break your heart to think that if you were trying to run the same scheme in Afghanistan, it just would not be open to girls.
I know it does seem a complete step backwards in terms of where we were before the Taliban came into power. Why should women, ladies, girls, not be educated to the same level as their male counterparts?
Yeah. In the Metro, page 3, we're talking about the heat wave, not just in this country, but all over Europe, and the effects. What are those effects as they hit the continent?
Well, absolutely. So there's unprecedented drought gripping almost half of Europe. 47% of Europe has seen no significant rain in nearly 2 months. And that barren spell may be the worst in 500 years. And we're seeing rivers such as the Rhine in Germany and the Po in Italy dry up.
Well, one of the complications of that, or the adverse side effects, is that it affects hydroelectric power being delivered as well. So this adds to the whole thing of power outages and power shortages as we hit the winter.
Absolutely. Deeply worrying.
Deeply worrying. Guys, here's a story here, which I would be interested in your view on. If you're attending a funeral, funeral goers can now talk to the deceased. So the deceased, they're gone, their history, they're beyond the grave now. And you can now order a hologram service that enables the person you're saying goodbye to speak to you in the presence. And I went to a funeral on Friday, and the man involved, I thought to myself, this would be very entertaining. It would be because sometimes funerals, they try to be celebrations. The one I went to was sentimental, it was emotional, but also there were lots of funny things with it as well. Where do you stand, Nigel, on the idea that the person you're saying goodbye to could be there? As a matter of fact, they do it in such a way that they can ask the congregation to ask a question that has a pre-prepared, obviously it was a pre-prepared answer.
I think it would depend on...
Creepy? Weird?
Well, certainly creepy, but it rather depends on what the deceased said.
Yes.
I mean, if they decided to get their own back on all the people there, I just wanted to say to so-and-so there and so-and-so there, that what I really thought of them while I was alive was.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, a bit weird. I mean, I like funerals to be amusing, because I think that actually shows the character of the person who's disappeared. But I think the person who disappeared should disappear.
It's called the Story File Holographic Conversational Video Experience.
It would be.
Well, I think the congregation should be forewarned and should sign a disclaimer.
Yes, yes.
In advance of attending.
I was funny. You talk about being forewarned. My A-level studies, and I think my O-level studies as well, included works of Thomas Hardy, including Far from the Madding Crowd. And basically, it now comes, Stephanie, with a warning. Thomas Hardy's work comes with a trigger warning. Students are advised that the novelist depicts the cruelty of nature. And basically, in Far from the Madding Crowd, always remember there's a tale where they come across sheep which are bloated. They have this awful, they eat the wrong sort of clover grass and it expands their tummies. I must have been doing the same. But they have to pierce the tummies of the sheep to let this out. But anyway, you're warned as a student, this contains descriptions of dead and dying sheep.
Yeah, I mean, well, why the warning? That surely that if you're a university student about to read Thomas Hardy,
yes,
you know that he is a pretty sort of black author. So a lot of it's quite depressing stuff, and there's quite a bit of rural violence in there. The idea you have to warn,
isn't it?
But it's reality. But the idea you have to warn students beforehand, you might be upset about this.
I always do remember that chapter, you know, where they talk about it, and I thought, how ingenious. They take these needles and they pierce. I didn't know that this clover led to this reaction within the sheep, and also then.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, I didn't find it upsetting at all, either in the book or the film.
Yeah. Indeed, very good. Nigel and Stephanie, thank you both very much indeed. The guys are going to be back in about 40 minutes' time.
Right now, it is 9 minutes to 8. It's time for On Your Doorstep. Well, joining us now is Ellie. We're in Essex. Ellie, talk us through. We've gone from sort of wedding planners. What's next?
Good morning to you both. Yes, we're in the historical town of Maldon today, which is famous for its salt and also its riverside. I'm going to be taking you there shortly, but for now, we're in my childhood dream. We're in a real-life chocolate factory. So good morning to you. You are live on TV and radio. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us where we are?
Yeah, my name's Sonia. Welcome to Tempered. This is all our amazing chocolate. We have 14 flavours.
Yeah, so show us some of these flavours. It's incredible.
Yeah, this is our Maldon Sea Salt bar. This is our standard bar. And then we have this one, which is our dark honeycomb. This is our large bar.
So you are a family-run business. You're already very, very popular. You haven't actually been running that long, though, have you?
No, we launched in November 20, so we've been going 20 months now. And the internet was brilliant in the start, because obviously it was in lockdown, so everybody was buying their treats online. It was doing really, really well. And now we do markets and events and things like that, and we've actually really expanded already, and it's only been 20 months.
Yeah, already doubled the size. Absolutely fantastic. And good morning. Hello.
Good morning. I'm Carla. I'm brand manager here, and would you like to see where the magic happens?
Yes, please. I thought you'd never ask. Yes, so we're going to go. This is the real life chocolate factory now, yes?
Yes.
Incredible. Good morning, good morning. So talk us through this factory.
So we start the morning about 7 o'clock. We load this machine up with chocolate. This is our dark chocolate machine. So we pour in callets, let it melt, and then this tempers it for us.
I wish you guys had smell vision, Eamonn and Rosie. It smells absolutely incredible in here.
Here's the milk chocolate one. This is a bit bigger. Obviously, we make more milk chocolate. So this is like a huge machine. This does 60 kilos of chocolate.
Wow, it just looks so smooth and incredible.
Lovely. We pour the chocolate from there. We pour them into our bespoke moulds. We had these designed for us. We then set the chocolate in the fridges, and we come out with this as our final product. So we've got a lovely looking bar, really shiny. It snaps nicely because of the temper.
So how was that during the heat wave, the 40 degrees?
The good thing about making it in here is that we are 20 degrees in here with aircon, but selling it's a problem because it starts to melt. So we did some events where it started to get a bit soft, but we've coped quite well, to be honest. Our first sort of big summer.
You're well prepared, fantastic. Yeah. And then you go to packaging.
Yeah, this is a foiled bar. So the next step would be foiling. These are all hand foiled. We use recyclable packaging as well, so not all of it can be recycled. And these are our wrappers, hand wrapped. And then we end up with a final product which looks something like that.
Wow. So what is your most popular bar of chocolate?
Maldon Sea Salt and Caramel. We're obviously based in Maldon. We use Maldon Sea Salt. This is our biggest seller. It sells double everything else. And it's a fantastic product, so great.
And Maldon Sea Salt have also been brilliant, and on our next run of packaging they're going to let us use their font and their logo.
Oh, brilliant. So two kind of Maldon businesses coming together. That's brilliant, really, really good. So I do want to ask you about the cost of living, because obviously this is a luxury chocolate. I mean, we can see here you've got a gift box here that's, I think you said it was 500 grams of pure chocolate there. So it looks lovely. But, you know, cost of living, people aren't going to be buying luxury chocolate, are they? Is that something that's worrying you?
Not really. We plan to keep our prices the same, and we are an affordable artisan luxury product, so we're a nice affordable treat in hard times.
Yes, and people are going to need a treat, aren't they?
I think so, yeah, especially when things are so hard.
What better than chocolate?
What better than chocolate? I mean, I'm literally a massive chocolate fan. May I try some? It's now the taste test. I mean, it would be rude not to, right? So this is your most popular bar. This is Maldon sea salt and caramel. I've got that right? Yeah, okay. I've got a big chunk here. Wow. That is sweet and salty. Incredible. Amazing. Eamonn and Rosie, I bet you wish you were here, right? This is incredible. It smells amazing. So I'm going to get back to the chocolate now, and then I'll take you down to the river in a little bit.
Yeah, Ellie, thank you very much. We'll be back with Ellie in about an hour's time, discovering more of the delights of Maldon in Essex. Really appreciate your time. Now, after the break here on the programme, we're going to ask the former chairman of the Conservative Party about what they plan to do about potential blackouts this winter. We've seen the Labour Party's strategy. What do they have to say? That's after the weather.
Got a more unsettled day as there'll be scattered heavy showers and thunderstorms developing across the country. Let's have a look at the details. By midday, the southwest of England's going to have a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be quite heavy and potentially thundery too. It's going to feel quite warm and humid. Across the southeast of England, it's going to be a largely dry day with plenty of hot and hazy sunshine. It won't be long before some scattered thunderstorms develop later on. There's going to be plenty of warm and hazy sunshine across South Wales this lunchtime, but also a scattering of heavy and potentially thundery showers. To the Midlands, and it's going to be hot and humid this lunchtime with plenty of hazy sunshine. There'll also be scattered showers around, some potentially quite heavy and thundery. Some places will stay dry altogether. It's a mixed picture this afternoon across northeast England. It's going to be warm and humid with some sunny spells and scattering showers. In Scotland now, and showers could merge into longer periods of rain across southern Scotland this afternoon. Some of that will be quite heavy at times. It's feeling cooler than it has over the weekend. In Northern Ireland now, and there'll be further thundery showers expected this afternoon, perhaps leading to some even localised flooding, spells of sunshine in between. Temperatures are lower than recent days, but feeling more humid. So thundery downpours will continue through the rest of the day with a Met Office yellow warning in force. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Labour promises a freeze on energy bills amid warnings of mass blackouts this winter.
Hello there, very good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock exactly. It's Monday the 15th of August. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with me, Eamonn Holmes, and Rosie Wright.
Well, here's what's leading the news this morning. And the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is going to announce today plans to freeze household energy bills and implement an £8 billion windfall tax on oil companies if he was the Prime Minister.
All of this amid reports that power stations are preparing to shut down to ration energy supplies come the winter in an effort to avoid blackouts.
More than 20,000 people have crossed the English Channel in small boats so far this year, with some 607 detected on Saturday alone. Well, our Home and Security editor Mark White's been investigating. He'll be here with all of the details.
We're also outside Manchester Crown Court. The second week of the Ryan Giggs trial will be getting underway there. Full report and preview from us.
Please do get in touch, particularly what do you make of Sir Keir Starmer's strategy to save us money on our energy bills? Sensible or an illusion? Get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can drop us a tweet too @gbnews.
OK, politically, everybody's previewing that the Labour Party will announce today a plan to freeze household energy bills and bring in a windfall tax, another windfall tax on energy providers.
Now, the proposal will attempt to tackle what the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, calls a national economic emergency, amid reports that power stations are preparing to shut down this winter to conserve supplies.
OK, in studio now, GB News political correspondent Mr Tom Harwood with this one and previewing what Labour have to say today, and indeed will it have any influence on the two Conservative leadership candidates?
Yeah, it's finally the Labour Party making some news after being really rather quiet for the last few weeks. In fact, last week it wasn't the senior Labour figures currently in that party making the news, but Gordon Brown who came out of the woodwork and started making... So finally the
holidays, though,
he was indeed, as was Boris Johnson for a little bit as well. But yes, the Labour Party saying a 25% tax on those profits of energy companies would help fund. It would raise about £8 billion. But the Institute for Fiscal Studies say this proposal of freezing the price cap at the place that it is now would cost £60 billion for a year. £60 billion. So there might be a little bit more money that needs to be found there. Will it shift the terms of debate, though? Potentially. I don't think for a second that the Conservative leadership contenders will take up this proposal wholesale, but it certainly does focus the conversation on what more they may be willing to do themselves. Will they find alternate proposals to do similar things in a different way? It's interesting, though, both Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss have been very reluctant to say that they would want a windfall tax. This leadership contest has been so much about tax and spend, the size of the state, the weight of the tax burden in this country. And to increase taxes, I think, would be politically difficult for a Conservative leadership contender, given the selectorate they're facing.
There's a YouGov poll that's been taken out with the Times. It's their lead story today. And they say 3 in 4 Tory voters, obviously, that they spoke to, back this energy plan from the Labour Party. Might this shift the dial a little bit at Conservative HQ?
I think that it probably won't in the short term, because Conservative voters are a distinct group from Conservative members. Conservative voters behave more like the country does and actually tend to be a lot more centrist on economic issues, whereas Conservative members tend to be more on the free market bent of things, more sceptical of high tax and spend. So given who the contenders are facing right now, that it's members rather than voters, that might not be the biggest consideration. And one other thing when it comes to opinion polls, one of the issues of the last 2 years, one of the big criticisms of the Boris Johnson administration was that many people said it was led too much by opinion polls, following public opinion rather than leading it.
Yeah.
And to some extent, we may well be seeing Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss wanting to try and lead opinion, to try and change the conversation rather than try and follow opinion polls.
OK, well, hold that thought there, Tom, because I want now to speak and bring into the conversation Liz Truss supporter, former chairman of the Conservative Party, that is Mr Brandon Lewis. We say good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, so here we go. We're talking about Labour today and what they're going to do about the energy crisis. How much pressure does that put on your candidate to do the same?
Well, I don't think it's pressure, actually. Look, Liz has led the way on this debate in asking and making the case for a lower tax economy, putting more money in people's pockets, committing to that emergency budget to look at what more we can do to specifically deal with these challenges ahead of that price cap review in the autumn. So others have been playing catch up. What we've seen from Labour today is something that to an extent is uncosted, and what they have outlined, I have to say, is something that's going to cost in the region of what we spent on furlough through the whole of COVID. So quite a big pressure on public finances. What we've been setting out, what Liz has been setting out, is a fully costed programme with the commitment to an emergency budget to look at what more we can do in a structured and professional way.
Would disagree with you about that fully costed business. They say it is fully funded, and one of the ways they'll do that is another windfall tax on energy companies. You wouldn't be keen on that, would you?
Well, actually, look, I'd say there's a couple of points in that. If you look at what the IFS have already said today, there is arguably a £7 billion gap in what they're doing based on their prediction of where they think things might go without allowing for what that might do with inflation, because ultimately what they're going to do is compress prices in the short term rather than actually deal with the underlying issues around energy security and people's affordability for these challenges. Equally, they're looking at a retrospective tax. I think that's always a difficult and dangerous space to be in. But what Liz has outlined is wanting to put more money in people's pockets in the short and medium term to deal with some of these challenges, with also that commitment to emergency budget to look at what more specific things we can do to help people. That's giving the Treasury and her team time between now and that emergency budget to work this through properly, so we come up with a package that actually works for and delivers for people.
What about strategies that we've seen, let's say, in France, where the government have just enforced an energy cap?
We've got a different structure, obviously, to the energy industry in France, not least for all the state ownership in France. What we've got to look at here is how we help people with the general cost of living, because what we've got to do is ensure we're not pushing up inflation. Again, Liz's plans are based on working to hold back inflation and making sure we've got more money in people's pockets. That's why she's particularly outlined those tax reductions that she has as a principle of a lower tax economy, looking to get higher growth. Yes, we want better energy security. That does take time. That's why, as I say, the Chancellor and the Chief Secretary working, who are also on Liz's team, working to build up this package of support that we can give to people with an emergency budget. So it's properly structured. But Liz has been the one leading the way on how we get more money in people's pockets from the very beginning, and we've been consistent about that.
What is the plan when it comes to October, where, some people are saying we're going to set up a campaign and say we just won't pay our bills? Some people don't have the choice to say, I'm going to opt in and say, do you know what, I'm going to protest and not pay. They just won't be able to. How really, please explain to me, how are those people going to be helped?
Well, you're absolutely right to identify there is a real challenge, and I see this with constituents in my constituency who are worried about what will be coming later on this year with where energy prices are going. And that's why what we've outlined and what Liz has outlined is we're going to put more money in people's pockets quickly. You've got the money coming through with the suspension on the green levies. You've got the reduction through the national insurance tax, removing that increase that was put in a few months ago. That puts more money directly in people's pockets. But what we're also saying, what Liz has outlined, is that she will, if she becomes Prime Minister in early September, and in the first week of September we'll know who that is, Liz will set out an emergency budget with her new Chancellor within weeks of becoming Prime Minister. So people will have that knowledge of exactly what we can do that can deliver for people and help them with these challenges, which is a global inflation challenge as well as a global energy price challenge.
Brandon Lewis, thanks for explaining that. Brandon Lewis is a Liz Truss supporter. He's former chairman of the Conservative Party, live there from Westminster. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. We'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, what do you make of what Brandon Lewis is saying and what Liz Truss will do, if anything? She's going to hold out till October for what he believes will be something that is properly costed.
And yet interesting here that from the Liz Truss campaign, they're now saying an emergency budget within weeks of that first week of September. So before October before the Conservative Party conference, which starts in early October. That's some confirmation there that we'll have an emergency budget really, really very soon under a Liz Truss premiership. Interesting, though, that you didn't hear specifics in terms of what further fiscal help would be provided beyond tax cuts. I think it's fairly understandable that there will be some sort of fiscal help for those who do not pay tax, particularly people on benefits. But it's interesting that neither Rishi Sunak nor Liz Truss want to spell out the shape of that quite yet, potentially because it would be politically difficult to do so in this leadership contest.
We don't have the architecture of any of these promises yet, do we? Tom, thank you very much, our political correspondent in the studio with us.
Thanks, Tom, with his own show at 9:30, of course, as usual, the briefing this morning.
Now it's 11 minutes past 8, and this weekend saw the number of illegal immigrants crossing the English Channel exceed 20,000 this year alone. On Saturday, for example, 607 individuals made the journey across 14 small boats. That's the third time the total has exceeded 600 in a day this year.
Mark White joins us now in the studio, our Home Affairs editor. So much for Rwanda and putting paid to all of this.
We've been here so many times before, haven't we? It seems just days since I was reporting that the number had hit 18,000. That's because it was less than a week ago that milestone had been reached. Now, over the weekend, 20,017. Now, that's not including those who came across yesterday. We're still waiting on the official figures to be released by the Ministry of Defence. Our producer down in Kent suggests it's probably a couple of hundred yesterday, and again this morning more.
Put it in, I mean, a lot of people will think there's a very easy solution to all of this. I mean, if there was, it would have been implemented by now. But you're talking about 20,000 people in a year. Where do they go added to who is already here? What are the repercussions of all of that? Who pays the price?
Well, this is, of course, completely separate to those who come into the country legitimately as migrants who will require accommodation. And they, of course, number in the hundreds of thousands each year. The asylum seekers who are coming in, especially across the Channel, require emergency accommodation. What is happening is that the Home Office is requisitioning a growing number of hotels. 2.5 months ago, we did a report on GB News where we analysed the likely impact and how many rooms were being used. 30,000 hotel rooms every single day are being requisitioned.
And again, without being facetious about that, I mean, there's a lot of people who now won't get a holiday because of that.
Yeah, business travellers who can't use that hotel because what they do is they requisition the whole hotel. You don't have half asylum seekers, half open to other business. And it was 30,000 2.5 months ago. Since then, another 10,000 have crossed the Channel. So do the maths. We're up at least 6 million a day now that it's costing to house these people.
And people are asking, what are the strategies that are being employed to stop people making these journeys and to crack down on the people smugglers? Last week, there was a suggestion that the French authorities might be changing strategy. Are they actually doing that, and how much impact would it have?
Not noticeably, they're not, no. I mean, to be blunt, the policy as announced by Boris Johnson at Lyd Airport in April, where I was, three-pronged policy. We're going to get the military, the Royal Navy, in command and control of the Channel. We were going to have the Rwanda policy, where thousands could be shipped to Rwanda. And then we were going to have Linton-on-Ouse, where 1,200 people would go there initially. This would be the blueprint for other big accommodation centres. Apart from the command and control element being done by the Royal Navy, the rest, they're in tatters. Rwanda's going nowhere fast. It's mired in legal challenges. Linton-on-Ouse has now been cancelled after the Ministry of Defence pulled out the rug from under Priti Patel.
Politically, will Priti Patel pay a price for this?
I think undoubtedly. I haven't spoken to anyone that thinks that she can remain in post after the new Prime Minister takes over. Who will replace her and who will take on what is an unenviable job of trying to make some kind of impact on the thousands that are crossing every week? I don't know.
I mean, they're just going to inherit the same problems. Do you think Priti Patel has exhausted the best option she can?
Well, both candidates, interestingly, are still married to the Rwanda deal. In fact, they want to widen that out to include other countries that might be receptive to receiving asylum seekers for processing as well. But they need to get over this issue of challenges that are using European human rights legislation to stymie those efforts. Now, they say that they're going to try to enact legislation that will allow our courts to have a narrower definition of what a refugee is, so that people can't claim, for instance, right to family life as a means of remaining in this country. We'll see if that works in the fullness of time. But it's looking like it'll be at least October before they have another go at trying to send people to Rwanda. And all the time, as I say, Eamonn, like this morning, 3 or 4 more boats making their way across the channel.
Our Home Affairs editor, Mark White, there. Your views, gbviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews if you think you've got a solution to what is going on. Mark, thank you very much indeed.
Right now, it is 16 minutes past 8. Let's just bring you up to date with the other stories making headlines today. And Salman Rushdie's son says his father has suffered life-changing injuries in that knife attack on Friday. But his son has said that his feisty and defiant sense of humour remains intact. The 75-year-old author has been taken off a ventilator after being stabbed at a literary event in New York State.
The UK is braced for 3 days of yellow weather warnings for thunderstorms. After another spell of hot weather, the Met Office says there's a high risk of power cuts and flash flooding.
The taste for craft beer continues to boom, with about 200 new breweries opening last year as demand for premium artisan drinks has gone up. There are now almost 2,500 breweries across the UK.
The second week of the Ryan Giggs trial starts today at Manchester Crown Court. The former footballer facing charges of assault and coercive or controlling behaviour.
Our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, is outside the court for us now. Sophie, just to explain, this is the start of week 2. What do we know so far?
Yeah, good morning to you both. We're here outside Manchester Crown Court, where Ryan Giggs, former Manchester United player and former manager of the Welsh national side, as you say, is about to face the second week of his trial here. So he's been accused of 3 separate charges. The first is of an alleged assault against his ex-girlfriend Kate Greville, in which allegedly caused actual bodily harm. That was supposed to be on the night of November 20th, 2020 at his home in Worsley, Greater Manchester. The second charge is the assault of Ms Greville's sister, which supposedly took place in the same alleged incident. The third charge is of, as you said, coercive and controlling behaviour during their relationship between August of 2017 and November 2020. Mr Giggs has denied all 3 charges, pleading not guilty. So last week we saw Ms Greville take the stand in court, where she, apologies for the noise, we've chosen the right time with the bin men here. As I say, she gave evidence and she was cross-examined by the defence. The court heard her describe the alleged incident where she said she left alone from a night out after she'd argued with Mr Giggs. When he arrived home, the argument continued. The court then heard a recording of a 999 call made to the police by Ms Greville's sister at 10:05 that evening. In the call, when she was asked what had happened, she said there was an assault, he headbutted her. She also said there was blood everywhere. The jury was then shown body cam footage of Mr Giggs' arrest. So the trial is due to continue this morning. We're into the second week now. We don't know for sure what's going to happen, although the defence barrister Chris Daw QC told the jury last week that we could expect former Manchester United manager Alex Ferguson and Mr Giggs' former Manchester United teammate Gary Neville to take the stand, alongside Mr Giggs' ex-wife Stacey Giggs. So it's predicted to last about 10 days, this trial. We've seen 5 days so far. There's another 5 days to come, but that's if it sticks to the schedule here at Manchester Crown Court.
Sophie Reaper, thank you very much indeed. Live outside Manchester Crown Court, where The Ryan Giggs trial will continue today.
And we'll have details on the trial across the week as well. Now, coming up here on the programme, we're going to be looking into Salman Rushdie's satanic verses as the author recovers from last week's knife attack. First, though.
Yeah, here comes your weather picture for this Monday morning.
Got a more unsettled day as there'll be scattered heavy showers and thunderstorms developing across the country. Let's have a look at the details. By midday, the southwest of England's going to have a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be quite heavy and potentially thundery too. It's going to feel quite warm and humid. Across the southeast of England, it's going to be a largely dry day with plenty of hot and hazy sunshine. It won't be long before some scattered thunderstorms develop later on. There's going to be plenty of warm and hazy sunshine across South Wales this lunchtime, but also a scattering of heavy and potentially thundery showers. To the Midlands, and it's going to be hot and humid this lunchtime with plenty of hazy sunshine. There'll also be scattered showers around, some potentially quite heavy and thundery. Some places will stay dry altogether. It's a mixed picture this afternoon across northeast England. It's going to be warm and humid with some sunny spells and scattering showers. In Scotland now, and showers could merge into longer periods of rain across southern Scotland this afternoon. Some of that will be quite heavy at times. It's feeling cooler than it has over the weekend. In Northern Ireland now, and there'll be further thundery showers expected this afternoon, perhaps leading to some even localised flooding, spells of sunshine in between. Temperatures are lower than recent days, but feeling more humid. So thundery downpours will continue through the rest of the day with a Met Office yellow warning in force. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
24 minutes past the hour of 8 o'clock, and at 8:45 this morning, we're going to be back out on your doorstep, Maldon in Essex, talking to people there about what matters to them. And they produce sea salt there. They produce a lot of sea salt, which is a bit of high-grade stuff that they have. You hear about
it's salty.
you hear about Himalayan salt, but apparently Maldon salt's very good too.
And at 9:10, we're going to speak to Ray Lewis, the former lead singer of the legendary soul group The Drifters, famous for songs like Under the Boardwalk and Save the Last Dance for Me.
Lovely tunes, and you can join in on those tunes or any of our discussions. Anything you've got to ask Ray, for instance, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News. Salman Rushdie's family have been reporting on his long road to recovery, they say, after being stabbed in New York last week.
Now, the novelist remains in a critical condition after sustaining wounds to his neck, his stomach, eye, chest and thighs.
We're now going to speak to the author Kapil Komareddy, who joins us now for the latest on this. Kapil, good morning to you, and I'm sure, like the rest of us, you were very, very shocked by this, but yet that fatwa was there, it remained in place, and it seems to have been acted upon. What I wanted to ask you, first of all, was the book that led to the fatwa, the Satanic Verses. A lot of people are saying, yeah, but why was that so controversial? Why did it result in the fatwa being ordered?
It's so unfortunate, Eamonn, because that book is one of those books that's not so much read as it's deposited into our imaginations by culture. People just assume that we know of that book, even though very few people have read the book. It's an epic novel, it's a complex novel, it's a multi-layered novel in which the allegedly blasphemous action takes place in the imagination of a deranged character during a dazed phase of his life. And the beginning of the controversy around this book was in India, led by a group of rather self-serving Muslim parliamentarians who demanded a ban on the book. And one of the MPs said that, this book is deliberately written to insult and provoke Muslims. And he was asked if you've read the book, and he said, no, I haven't read the book. And the Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi kowtowed, and he banned the book. And as a result of that ban, Iran took notice of this book, and the Ayatollah Khomeini issued a death threat not only against Salman Rushdie, but also everyone involved with this book. And it's very important to remember that one of the book's translators, the Japanese translator of the book, was murdered. The Italian translator of the book was shot. 37 people died when extremists tried to kill the Turkish translator of the book. And the recent stabbing of Salman Rushdie is really the culmination of a very long process. It's not the act of a lone deranged man. It's the culmination of a very long process in which many people besides the assailant are complicit.
And he warned of behaviour like this. Just remind us what happened in the aftermath of the initial publication. He's gone from safe house to safe house, needed police protection.
Yeah, all he did, as he kept saying, is I wrote a novel. And the list of people, or the list of luminaries who faulted him for provoking the bloodlust of his critics is embarrassingly long. It involves people like Roald Dahl, John le Carré, Germaine Greer, Geoffrey Howe, Jimmy Carter. Everyone faulted him for writing a novel when he said, what I'm doing is I'm a novelist. I've created this fictitious world, and if you don't like it, don't read it. And most people who wanted his death, who wanted his blood, didn't actually read it. And rather than mount a defense of this fundamental freedom to think and to write, people who ought to be the guardians and custodians of those freedoms actually took the side of the reactionaries and the obscurantists who wanted to murder Salman Rushdie.
Yes, someone who didn't take that stance, of course, the author J.K. Rowling, who in her support now, or offering support to Mr. Rushdie, finds herself and her life being threatened as well.
I mean, this is the thing. As the Ayatollah said, it's not just Salman Rushdie, it's anyone involved with the book. And anyone who defends this book. In India, many eminent Muslims actually defended Salman Rushdie and his right to write the book, and they were attacked by fanatics and reactionaries, and the government took no action against those people who attacked these eminent Muslims. And within the Muslim world, many what we call moderate Muslims who took the position that Salman Rushdie had a right to produce this book, had a right as a writer to think freely, they were attacked. And J.K. Rowling sadly joins that list of people. And we have to take what is happening very seriously. The fatwa is not an historic event. It's a live process. It is current. As recently as 2019, The Independent published a piece by a British writer who said that he wouldn't have the satanic verses in his house because it was so many Muslims found it offensive. There is a strange fusion of what I would call the murderously benighted and the suicidally enlightened. And this Salman Rushdie is a casualty of the fusion of these two forces, of the regressive and the progressive.
And we can have now writers writing in fear. How do we?
Yes.
And is it possible to safeguard freedom of expression?
It is possible if the state is willing to safeguard freedom of expression. Freedom of expression means nothing if there's no freedom to offend. You don't set out to offend people, but if people choose to take offense, that's not your fault. Salman Rushdie did not write this book to offend people. A lot of people took great pains to work themselves up into a state of offendedness. And the freedom to think freely, I mean, we're talking in 2022, the ability for us to sit together and discuss ideas for which many of us would have been hanged a few centuries ago is civilization. This is civilization. And I speak to you on the day, today's India's 75th Independence Day. And it shames me as an Indian, as a citizen of India, as a proud citizen of India, that India was the first country to ban this novel, and in the hysteria that India licensed actually culminated in the stabbing. That is the origin of this, and because it is India's 75th independence anniversary, I just want to read this one line Salman Rushdie wrote about India. He said, "India, my too muchness, my hug me, my everything at once. India, my mother, my father, my first great truth." This is what he wrote about India. And the Indian government repaid him by putting a mark on his head.
Ironically, though, Kapil, the interest has rocketed in Sir Salman Rushdie's works, and with many stores in London and New York saying that they are out of copies of books such as The Satanic Verses.
That is really heartening to hear, because when the book was first published, many stores were afraid to stock it. And some stores, and I remember, I think it was in California, that they had to hire security just because they put copies of the book in their bookshelves. Now, if this results in a defiant display of this book, that would be, I think Salman would himself say that this has been worth it. If this leads to people saying, I'm not afraid of these bigots, these thugs, these murderers. I'm going to exercise my freedom to think, to read, to write freely. And that means, I wrote a piece some years ago on which I said, every Valentine's Day, one way to cherish the freedoms we have is to read the Satanic Verses, because it was on Valentine's Day, the day on which we celebrate love and affection, that the Ayatollah Khomeini went on Radio Tehran and pronounced the death sentence against Salman Rushdie. So if this incident results in a defiant expression, defiant display of our freedoms, exercise of our freedoms, that is truly heartening and wonderful.
Kapil Kamiredi, really appreciate your take on things. Thank you for your analysis. Speaking to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking to us live from Armenia. And Kapil is the author of Malevolent Republic, A Short History of the New India.
Now, after the break, we're going to be going through the papers. Lots of discussion about our writers fearful and freedom of expression in the pages. Nigel Nelson and Stephanie Boyce will join us. Don't go anywhere.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Twenty-four minutes to 9. You're on breakfast with Eamonn and myself, Rosie. We're just about to go through the papers. We've set off a bit of almost a poetry competition, Eamonn.
Yes.
Eamonn's been singing twice. Well, John has given in his idea of a song. I can just imagine Eamonn singing this very clearly.
But is this to the tune of a mouse in New Amsterdam, is it?
I don't know if it's going to work, if the iambic pentameter will work for that, but I can just imagine Eamonn singing this. GB News, I have heard, what a lovely show you serve. Impartial news offerings on my plate, sends me on my way, so great.
Yeah, let me see that again. So if we sing it to I Saw a Mouse Swear Under the Chair. GB News, I have heard, what a lovely show you serve. Impartial views, oh no. Not worth it. It'll never catch on. It'll never catch on.
John, thank you for getting in touch anyway. Less of the singing, more of the paper reviews. Joining us now, political editor of the Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, and president of the Law Society, Stephanie Boyce. Thank you very much for both rejoining us for the final time on the programme. Let's start in the Telegraph if we can, Nigel. No room for a nanny as the Cambridges are moving.
Yes, they're downsizing. That they've decided that they don't want to live in Kensington Palace any longer. And they're moving to a smaller cottage near Windsor Castle. Now, this is not exactly a council house or anything like that. This is a Grade 2 listed cottage with things like the master bedroom has a ceiling adorned with dolphins, and it has a Greco-Egyptian fireplace. So it's obviously quite posh. But what it means is the staff that they've got can't live in. So up until now, the children have had a live-in nanny. And there's also been a housekeeper and a chef at Kensington Palace. They will have to live somewhere else. What I quite like about this is the main purpose of it is to try and give the children as normal a background as they possibly can. They can go to a much more local school, for instance, from there. And it seems to be the right thing for a modern future king to be thinking about doing.
Well, the staff will probably live in the nearby castle, one would have imagined. There's probably enough rooms in there. There was also talk that they would do a house swap eventually with the Yorks and their house Royal Lodge, which is huge, apparently.
Yes, but at the moment I think that they want to sort of live more as one family, as a united family, without all the trappings of royalty sort of barging in.
Right. In The Guardian, very disturbing story, a health hazard story, Stephanie. We're talking about when you go into hospital, there's already something wrong with you. It could get worse. Tell us why.
Well, absolutely. So 34 NHS hospital buildings in England have roofs made of concrete that are so unstable that they could fall down at any time. These buildings, hospital buildings, and the concrete material, that's like a chocolate aero bar, had a lifespan of 30 years and is now causing serious problems because it's crumbling. So we don't know what which 34 buildings it is, although the paper does go on to name a few. But it's simply unthinkable that you'd go to hospital to be treated and you could indeed be injured by the risk of the ceiling falling on you.
And it's also unthinkable that someone sanctions a hospital with a roof that has a lifespan of 30 years. I mean, you know, why? I just don't get that. You wouldn't sanction a house and say that roof's going to fall in 30 years.
I think because 30 years ago, the material, not that it's justification, but the building material that it was made of was popular and in, quite much use at the time. But it presents a danger, and the issue is that some $4 billion has been committed, purportedly, to refurbish and replace these roofs.
But they're not named, these hospitals, yet.
Well, the paper goes on to identify Hinchinbrook in Cambridgeshire, Frimley Park in Surrey and Airedale in West Yorkshire because they are already known to have issues with their roofs.
Gosh.
And the response from the Department of Health and Social Care said they provided more than $4 billion, as you suggested there, for trusts to support local priorities, including to maintain and refurbish their premises, and have set aside over £685 million to directly address the issues relating to the use in these cases.
Nigel, a couple of political stories from you in the Times and the Sun. We begin with the Times.
Yes.
About Boris Johnson.
Yes, and we could also ask on the basis of that last story where those 40 new hospitals are that he promised to build. This is Boris Johnson off on holiday again. He's only been a week back from his trip to Slovenia, and now, according to the Times, he's popped off to Greece. Some locals have photographed him there in a supermarket. Of course, his father Stanley has got a villa there, so it may well be that's where he and Carrie have gone. I don't begrudge, by the way, politicians having holidays. I think that provided they come back if there's a crisis, which, of course, Dominic Raab didn't.
A year ago, exactly, we were talking about that.
I do think that everyone deserves a break, and that applies to politicians. And, of course, Boris Johnson hasn't got anything to do at the moment. But he is threatening, according to this piece, he is threatening to do things by an aide is quoted as saying he will pop up constantly on his pet projects, which makes him sound a bit like a backseat driver for the next Prime Minister.
Well, what do you think his pop-up projects will be?
Apparently it's going to be Ukraine, levelling up and the NHS. But once you're out of office, there's not much you can do about any of them.
He has been instrumental in terms of what President Zelensky said in helping galvanise the West to provide more support for Ukraine. Do you think, or better question, what do you think his role should look like when he's no longer Prime Minister?
I think Prime Ministers need to do a step back and make an occasional intervention in a statesmanlike way, rather like someone like John Major does, Theresa May does occasionally.
Or like Gordon Brown last week, maybe.
And like Gordon Brown last week. On Ukraine, I mean, I think that Boris Johnson, he's absolutely genuine about his fulsome support for Ukraine. There's no reason to think that Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss won't be either. And that's what I mean about being a backseat driver, that you really have to allow them to get on with it.
He's also going to enter the property market. Where's he going?
He's going to Dulwich. The Sun describes it as a move to suburbia. I didn't think Dulwich was terribly suburban, but there you go. But according to the Sun, he's off to Dulwich Village. He's just sold the house he had in Camberwell, which I don't think him and Carrie ever actually moved into. But the house was on the market for £1.6 million. He bought it for 1.2, so it's a nice little £400,000 profit. And now, according to the paper, he wants to spend £3 million on a luxury place in Dulwich.
Which is where Mrs Thatcher
moved. Which is where Margaret Thatcher moved to after she fell from office.
Number 10, yeah.
She only stayed a year, though.
OK.
Should we look at page 9 of the Times, Stephanie? This is an absolute scandalous story. UN soldiers fathered thousands. What details do you know?
Where?
Well, a number of countries. This one primarily Democratic Republic of Congo, where young women were raped and traded for food for survival sex. And it goes on to say that thousands of children have been fathered by the UN nations peacekeepers, and they've been abandoned and left poor and destitute in these war-torn countries.
Well, yeah, it says that here the fathers were soldiers, officers, pilots, drivers, cooks, doctors from 12 different countries.
Opportunists, basically.
It's a grotesque, appalling behaviour.
But probably a consequence of war and occupation that we rarely hear about, that goes on but is not admitted to.
Well, absolutely. So this is researchers who are conducting research and have come across this through their investigations. But victims as young as 10 who have been exploited and used and abused in this way.
Well, we've heard this before with aid workers, haven't we?
Mm.
Yeah, as well. Right, ghastly story there. There's no solution to this, though, is there? I mean, we're just exposing the fact that it's happened. Nobody's taking responsibility.
Well, no, absolutely. But what should happen is that those who are responsible for this should be brought to justice.
Well, this would have happened in Vietnam, for instance. I remember reading about a lot of that there. I don't know what the consequence was or if the children were able to track down who their fathers were. But, yeah, sad consequence of what goes on there.
Well, the UN have said the organisation has intensified efforts to prevent exploitation and investigate perpetrators, saying the UN has become uniquely associated with this issue, therefore has undertaken to set a global standard for addressing these wrongs and dealing with its impact by prioritising the rights and dignity of the victims.
Yeah. Nigel, in the Telegraph, they report the pandemic of the consequence of the pandemic and the pandemic of people abandoning pets because of the cost of living crisis.
Yes, and this is sort of... I mean, a lot of people obviously got sort of cats and dogs during the pandemic, and now they're finding they can't afford to keep them. So Battersea Dogs Home, Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, I should say, they're now looking after many extra dogs and cats. Same thing applies to Dogs Trust. There are rescue centres all over the country who are also taking in animals. Some of them are full. And it's people who really can't afford to keep their pet. I mean, it is actually tragic. These animals have been well looked after.
And it is an expensive undertaking. I mean,
it is.
You know, it's like having another child in the family. I can only say, as someone who adopted a dog, who rescued a dog from the Dogs Trust, best thing I ever did in my life, changed my life. She's now 13 years of age. It happened 12 years ago. And just beautiful. And it's beautiful because you know that you're adopting the dog as well, that you're adopting, not shopping as well. So I know sad stories that people feel they have to hand their animal over, but think of how, if you can, give a home to, a forever home to one of these animals, think of how it will make you feel. You will not regret it.
Also, the mystery of your mate Ryland's snake that you mentioned earlier may have been solved.
Which is?
This is because, for the same reason, they require specialist heating and lighting. Now it's very expensive. 3 snakes have already been dumped, according to the RSPCA.
Well, I think one of them...
And Ryan only have one of them.
...is in Ryland's house in Brentwood in Essex. If you go to his social media account, his Instagram account, you will see the evidence there that poor Ryland went to bed last night, woke up with a snake in his bedroom. He had to stand on top of the bed all night. I don't know if it's been resolved or not, but he had this very exotic-looking snake. It was black with a white stripe on its head.
Well, that's part of the problem. And in the heat, those pets that have either escaped or, Nigel, as you mentioned, it just becomes too expensive to keep your cobra or whatever it might be. They've been let out. Normally, they'd be hidden in kind of the undergrowth in parks or whatever, in, you know, bushes or trees. And because it's really hot, they come out.
Like the rest of us.
Into places like Ryland's bedroom.
Yes.
Although it does make you wonder, though, how did it get there?
Well, I'm sure it's not the first
But I don't
snake
think
that's
Ryland
ever been
brought
in
it
there. But
I don't
anyway,
know.
I think it got...
No.
Anyway, you've got an art exhibition here in the Times, haven't you? Well, it's an art exhibition with a difference. It's page 17 of the Times.
And if you're listening on the radio, we can see sort of pictures of the £10 note with members of the royal family superimposed on them.
So absolutely. So what this is an exhibition of money that has been defaced as cries of protest over the years, the last 250 years, through currencies that have been mutilated, cries of anger, injustice, mockery or despair. And to give an example, featured a £10 note with the face of Harry replacing that of the Queen on the front and Meghan on the back.
And this was legal tender. It isn't now that it's defaced.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
You've left me speechless.
Well, indeed. Well, that you were listening and watching Stephanie Boyce there, President of the Law Society, and Mr. Nigel Nelson, who's the political editor of the Sunday People. Thank you both very much
Thank
indeed.
you both.
Appreciate
It's been
it.
a real pleasure, despite sort of references of mice and snakes and a few nursery rhymes too.
Anyway, with the time at 10 minutes to 9 o'clock, we're going to bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise.
Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer is going to set out a £29 billion plan to tackle what he's calling a national economic emergency. That's later today. They say it's going to be paid for, in part, by a windfall tax on the profits of oil and gas companies.
Salman Rushdie's son says his father has suffered life-changing injuries in a knife attack on Friday. But according to his son, his feisty and defiant sense of humour remains intact. The 75-year-old author has been taken off a ventilator after being stabbed at a literary event in New York State.
More than 20,000 migrants have crossed the Channel in small boats so far this year. Government figures show 607 crossings were made on Saturday. A total of just over 28,000 people were recorded making the journey last year.
Now, we're now going to talk about an unfortunate effect of the recent hot weather, and a man has gone missing in the River Thames. This was near Hampton Court Bridge.
The incident comes as it's confirmed that at least 22 people have died in heatwave-related drownings since the 9th of July.
Well, here's Claire Gauci. Claire is the campaigns manager for water safety at the Canals and River Trust on the dangers of swimming, because a lot of you do it in open water.
It's such devastating news that these 22 people have lost their lives. So a heartfelt condolences to their families and friends who are going through this difficult time. I think it's understandable why people want to cool down on a hot day. It's incredibly hot at the moment. And when you see a stretch of water, it looks so inviting to step in. The difficult thing is people aren't prepared to get in. There are lots of risks under the water that you just can't see. First one being cold water shock, which is particularly difficult in reservoirs and big rivers. This means that if you're jumping in, the temperature of your body is so different from the temperature of the water that it can make your body do involuntary responses like taking a big gasp of, oh, that's cold. But if you're underwater when you're doing that, you're going to draw in a lot of water. That's just one of the things that can happen with it. Of course, as well, the cold water can paralyse your muscles and make it put you in a very, very difficult situation. But particularly in canals, there's things like reeds and plant life that can tangle around your limbs and make it very difficult for you to move or to get out. There are hidden objects. Sadly, things are thrown into canals, like trolleys, and if you were to land on one, it would cause you a lot of problems. And not forgetting as well that canals particularly are routes for boats. That's where boats travel. They're not designed as swimming pools. So there could be some residue, oil or petrol left in the water. Therefore, that's very limited amounts, but it's really not the place to swim. So we're just asking people, if they want to cool down this summer, please Google an open water swimming club near them. Don't get in the canals and rivers in undesignated places to swim. You can't swim in canals anyway, it's prohibited, but please find a group that you can do it with safely and enjoy the waterway safely this summer.
Claire, I'm interested in that now. What is the difference between advising people not to do it, and yet advising people to do it with a group that are into open water swimming? Because I can't get over the appetite there is for this amongst people I know, amongst people who are on Instagram, whatever I mean, listen, I'm a non-swimmer, so it rules me out anyway. I'm frightened of all sorts of water. I wouldn't go near it. But it just never ceases to amaze me that any stretch of open water seems to be fair game for people. We hear about the fatalities, but we're not really talking about the huge amounts of people who are prepared to take on the risk or don't see the risk.
Well, I think in that particular instance, a lot of people know about them, particularly in groups, in open water swimming groups. I myself was very lucky yesterday to be able to join an open water swimming group, and I went for a swim yesterday, but I was with a group, I had a safety chat, I had a float behind me, I had people looking out for me and checking I was okay the whole time I was there, and we went out for a set period of time. And I think that's different than people who just jumping in just for fun. Unfortunately, this summer we've seen a lot of young men and teenage boys jumping off bridges and using them as diving boards and jumping into canal locks and using them as swimming pools. These things aren't designed for those purposes. There are hidden things in locks that you just won't be able to see. And if you're not familiar with how a lock works, you won't know that there's a small platform near the lock gates called a sill, which you could land on. It could really hurt you. So I think open water swimming is great if you're doing it properly. So we just really ask people, find a club near you. There are lots of different websites out there. Beyond Swim, there's an open water swimming organisation. Go on those websites and find somewhere that's right for you, because you can do it safely. You can have a really good time. We know that open water swimming is great for mental health and for physical health, but we also know that being by water is just really restorative, and at the Canal and River Trust we know that it can often be people's happy places, and we encourage people to come to the water, but just do it safely. And of course, if you don't want to get in, you can always go for a boat ride, you can try fishing lessons that we've got. There are lots of other ways to enjoy the water safely, but please just be careful when you're doing it.
Those are the wise words. Please just be careful. Do stay with us, because we're going to be chatting to legendary singer of the Drifters, Mr. Ray Lewis. And the Daily Mail's Andrew Pearce is coming in as well. One sings, one doesn't. But anyway, we've got that, plus the day's top stories.
Yeah, all of that to come after the weather.
Got a more unsettled day as there'll be scattered heavy showers and thunderstorms developing across the country. Let's have a look at the details. By midday, the southwest of England's going to have a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be quite heavy and potentially thundery too. It's going to feel quite warm and humid. Across the southeast of England, it's going to be a largely dry day with plenty of hot and hazy sunshine. It won't be long before some scattered thunderstorms develop later on. There's going to be plenty of warm and hazy sunshine across South Wales this lunchtime, but also a scattering of heavy and potentially thundery showers. To the Midlands, and it's going to be hot and humid this lunchtime with plenty of hazy sunshine. There'll also be scattered showers around, some potentially quite heavy and thundery. Some places will stay dry altogether. It's a mixed picture this afternoon across northeast England. It's going to be warm and humid with some sunny spells and scattering showers. In Scotland now, and showers could merge into longer periods of rain across southern Scotland this afternoon. Some of that will be quite heavy at times. It's feeling cooler than it has over the weekend. In Northern Ireland now, and there'll be further thundery showers expected this afternoon, perhaps leading to some even localised flooding, spells of sunshine in between. Temperatures are lower than recent days, but feeling more humid. So thundery downpours will continue through the rest of the day with a Met Office yellow warning in force. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Labour promises a freeze on energy bills amid warnings of blackouts come winter.
A very good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Monday the 15th of August. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Rosie Wright.
Wherever you're watching from or listening, you're very welcome. Leading the news this morning.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, will today announce plans to freeze household energy bills and implement an £8 billion windfall tax on oil companies if he's elected as Prime Minister.
Now, this comes as reports that power stations are preparing to shut down to ration energy supplies come winter in an effort to avoid blackouts.
More than 20,000 people have crossed the English Channel in small boats so far this year. 607 individuals were detected on Saturday alone.
And Ray Lewis, the former lead singer of the legendary group The Drifters, will be joining us in the studio very shortly. And you can join in any of our discussions. You can ask Ray for a tune. You can talk about The Drifters if you want. gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet at GB News. Saturday Night at the Movies. It's a good Drifters song.
Oh, and so many others to come. Down by the boardwalk.
Yeah.
Down by the sea. We've been talking about the sea a lot today.
Don't be tempting me to sing all of these as well. Leading the news, the Labour Party will today announce a plan to freeze energy bills for households and implement a windfall tax on energy companies.
Now, the proposal is going to attempt to tackle what the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, calls a national economic emergency amid reports that power stations are preparing to shut down this winter to conserve supplies.
Liz has led the way on this debate in asking and making the case for a lower tax economy, putting more money in people's pockets, committing to that emergency budget to look at what more we can do to specifically deal with these challenges ahead of that price cap review in the autumn. So others have been playing catch up. What we've seen from Labour today is something that to an extent is uncosted, and what they have outlined, I have to say, is something that's going to cost in the region of what we spent on furlough through the whole of COVID. So quite a big pressure on public finances. What we've been setting out, what Liz has been setting out, is a fully costed programme with the commitment to an emergency budget to look at what more we can do in a structured and professional way.
Labour would disagree with you about that fully costed business. They say it is fully funded, and one of the ways they'll do that is another windfall tax on energy companies. You wouldn't be keen on that, would you?
Well, actually, look, I mean, I'd say there's a couple of points in that. If you look at what the IFS have already said today, there is arguably a £7 billion gap in what they're doing based on their prediction of where they think things might go without allowing for what that might do with inflation, because ultimately what they're going to do is compress prices in the short term rather than actually deal with the underlying issues around energy security and people's affordability for these challenges. Equally, they're looking at a retrospective tax. I think that's always a difficult and dangerous space to be in. But what Liz has outlined is wanting to put more money in people's pockets in the short and medium term to deal with some of these challenges, with also that commitment to emergency budget to look at what more specific things we can do to help people. That's giving the Treasury and her team time between now and that emergency budget to work this through properly, so we come up with a package that actually works for and delivers for people.
What about strategies that we've seen, let's say, in France, where the government have just enforced an energy cap?
We've got a different structure, obviously, to the energy industry in France, not least for all the state ownership in France. What we've got to look at here is how we help people with the general cost of living, because what we've got to do is ensure we're not pushing up inflation. Again, Liz's plans are based on working to hold back inflation and making sure we've got more money in people's pockets. That's why she's particularly outlined those tax reductions that she has as a principle of a lower tax economy, looking to get higher growth. Yes, we want better energy security. That does take time. That's why, as I say, the Chancellor and the Chief Secretary working, who are also on Liz's team, working to build up this package of support that we can give to people with an emergency budget. So it's properly structured. But Liz has been the one leading the way on how we get more money in people's pockets from the very beginning, and we've been consistent about that.
What is the plan when it comes to October, where, you know, some people are saying we're going to set up a campaign and say we just won't pay our bills? Some people don't have the choice to say, oh, I'm going to opt in and say, do you know what, I'm going to protest and not pay. They just won't be able to. How really, please explain to me, how are those people going to be helped?
Well, you're absolutely right to identify there is a real challenge, and I see this with constituents in my constituency who are worried about what will be coming later on this year with where energy prices are going. And that's why what we've outlined and what Liz has outlined is we're going to put more money in people's pockets quickly. You've got the money coming through with the suspension on the green levies. You've got the reduction through the national insurance tax, removing that increase that was put in a few months ago. That puts more money directly in people's pockets. But what we're also saying, what Liz has outlined, is that she will, if she becomes Prime Minister in early September, and in the first week of September we'll know who that is, Liz will set out an emergency budget with her new Chancellor within weeks of becoming Prime Minister. So people will have that knowledge of exactly what we can do that can deliver for people and help them with these challenges, which is a global inflation challenge as well as a global energy price challenge.
Brandon Lewis there from the Conservative Party.
And lots of you have been getting in touch on what you think is the most appropriate strategy for dealing with energy prices, so keep those coming in. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
We're going to have a musical interlude now. The Drifters, one of the great soul groups of the 20th century, down on the boardwalk, like Sister and Brother. We could go on and on. The former lead singer of the group, Ray Lewis, will be at the Soul Town Festival. It's in Beckenham in Kent, the 3rd of September. That's a Saturday. But before he gets there, he's going to talk to us. Ray, great to see you.
Great to be here.
Great to see you. Do you know, does it ever amuse you or amaze you? I mean, good music's good music, but the people turn out for these festivals and people they just love the nostalgia.
I love that. It's amazing how the age shifts. We have such a young following today.
Why do you think you have a young following? I mean, because you wouldn't get one of your records played on Radio 1, for instance.
No.
And that'd be a young audience. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe not every day. But, you know, the parents have introduced the kids to the music that they love. And we have such a great following of the older generation. And they've taught their kids what good music is.
And it's interesting you said that actually in the UK, younger people really appreciate sort of the legends of their parents' era.
Exactly. And they're looking for something as a catalyst to start their own trend off of. And they usually build it off of something that's already been a success story.
Tell us about you, because the Drifters were already a success story.
Yes.
And they had a lead singer.
Yes, they did.
And then you came on board.
Yes, they did. When I came on board, I replaced the #1 voice of the Drifters, Mr. Johnny Moore. As a matter of fact, when I got the job, I didn't have a clue that's the position I was taking. I thought I was just taking the position of a lead singer. I mean, a backing vocal.
Yeah.
Until I got to the final contracts.
So what was it like reading that?
Honestly, it's in the book. When you read the book, you're just going to wet yourself because it's absolutely amazing. I saw this, and I'm trying to be as cool as I can because I don't want to realize this is just mind-blowing. I'm looking at this contract, and I get to the money part, and that just threw me on the floor. And then when I read on through and it gets to the part to say that I'll be taking over the lead position, it was over for me. By that time, I was stuttering and mumbling and thinking, they're going to fire me right here on the spot. It was just,
they'll find you out.
Yeah.
Was it like a hint of imposter syndrome?
Well, I had to pinch myself. I didn't really think that I belonged there. I thought, no, surely it's got to be for somebody better, someone that's trained and, fantastic voice and everything, that's stardom. And that just wasn't me.
But that stardom came along and it lasted for how long?
Oh, more than 40 years now.
Right.
Yeah.
But now you're still drifting.
Now I'm still drifting. Yes, I am. And I refuse to stop.
So you've your own group now.
I do.
Called Still Drifting.
That's correct.
And you guys, how would you describe yourselves? Are you a tribute act to the Drifters, or do you do your own stuff, or is it all Drifter stuff?
We do a balance of things, you know, because I play to such an eclectic audience, you know, youth, elderly, and range. So I have to try and combine it with a lot of different music, not just the Drifter music, and not just the. So what I do is that I have 3 younger guys with me, and they just bring out the youth. They really shine.
And who's in charge?
Well, they are, probably. I pay the bill, but they're in charge. The youth are always in charge. The parent will tell you that.
We talked about hits, so many, you know, There Goes My Baby, Under the Boardwalk, Kissing in the Back Row of the Movies, Save the Last Dance for Me,
yes.
Goodness me. So beautiful stuff. I mean, it's poetry, this stuff. Do you have a favourite?
I do.
Which is?
Sister and Brother.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Like Sister and Brother?
Like Sister and Brother.
Why does that mean something to you?
Well, the largest audience I think I've ever played for was on the Portsmouth Harbour. It was for the 200th year inauguration of Australia. It was for the Queen.
Yeah.
And we had about 100,000 people. It just looked like a sea of people, absolutely looked like a sea of people. We were the last on, we were at the top of the bill, and we were the last on. And that particular song was the finale song that we did for the show. So when the music for that song began, it was already dark, dusk anyway, and all you could see was just a sea of lighters. Looked like little fireflies. I mean, even now I can feel the hairs.
Goose pimples.
Oh my goodness. It was an amazing moment. I love performing this song. And the response was just absolutely amazing.
You took a big risk in your life, didn't you, by leaving the States, by leaving America and coming to live in England. Why did you choose to do that?
I guess I just never thought of it as a risk. You know, from touring over here, coming back and forth so many times. At the end of a tour, I'd go home and then, you know, have to come back at the beginning of a tour. But I was also working at home. I was also going home to work. I was in a series called Cagney and Lacey, but I was doing a lot of other films. I played a detective in Cagney and Lacey. So I was going back and forth to do films and to work and then come back over. So when I stopped filming and I wanted to concentrate on trying to do something or thinking about going solo, so I knew I would have to concentrate solely on that, I decided, well, you know, I like it here. I really do like it here. It's comfortable and, you know, it's small and just small enough for me to find my own little niche. In California, you're just a speck, you know? So I felt better here. And I just decided, well, okay, I'll try it.
And he now lives in Yorkshire. He lives in Yorkshire now, which is absolutely amazing. Who's on the bill for the Soul Town Festival? Who will you be rubbing shoulders with there?
Well, another friend, Kenny Thomas. Another gentleman, Phil Strawn, is also on. Amazing singer. Luther, he's just amazing, whatever he does. There's Janet Kay. Let's see who else is on there. There's quite a few.
There's quite a few, yeah. And you still get, you know, we talked about getting goosebumps talking about Sister and Brother.
Yeah.
When you get up there, does the music take over? Does the music really? I mean, is it like work?
It just guides you right along.
Yeah.
It's still the same for me. If I were on that side of the stage, it would be the same. If I were listening to it, I'd have the same feeling. It's the same feeling I have when I'm delivering the song. I still enjoy it. I still love the music. I wouldn't do it otherwise.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. You know, if you were watching it, what would you be feeling? And that is exactly right. Ray Lewis is appearing at the Soul Town Festival, Beckenham in Kent, Saturday the 3rd of September. There's still tickets available for that one there. But you've met them all: Whitney Houston, Lionel Richie, Paul McCartney, Diana Ross. You've worked with them. Worked with them as well. It's a great privilege to have you in the studio.
It's absolutely all mine. Thank you.
Yeah, keep on drifting.
Thank you.
Ray, thank you for coming in.
It's an absolute pleasure. Can I just say one thing before I go?
Please.
Soul Town is particularly special for me.
Why?
Because this is the 3rd time I've had a chance to be there. So I want it, and I love that. But they're family. The people I've met there, you know. We're no longer just artists. We're family and friends. So please come out because I do want to see you. And if I get a chance, I'd like to meet you as well. So I'm hoping.
And, you know, a lot of people phoning in today, they can't help but seeing you. You're so luminous. You're glowing today. And that beautiful lemon-coloured shirt there today.
I was a bit worried I'd look more like Big Bird or something.
There's no missing you anyway. The legendary Mr. Ray Lewis. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Bye.
It's coming up to 9:15. You're on Breakfast with GB News. Don't go anywhere. Shortly, we're going to be joined by the consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, telling us what he thinks of the big stories of the day. That's next.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Right, we're just rounding up all the stories of the day and what's got people's blood boiling and what's got the interest, what's got the hackles up of our own Mr. Andrew Pearce, the consultant editor of the Daily Mail. Lovely to see you. Lovely to start the week with you again, my friend. Could I start on a morbid note? There is on the front page of the Telegraph here. What do you think of this? I mean, if you and I were to go, we could actually be at our own funerals.
I know.
Right, so there is a hologram that you can get. The service has now started in Britain, and it's called Holographic Conversational Video Experience. So you can go to the funeral and they can say, we all remember Andrew, he was a great man, he was da-da-da-da, whatever, and then Andrew pops up, and you can even take questions and answers, obviously pre-recorded answers.
Yeah. It's horrific. It's absolutely, I think it's horrific. You're going to say goodbye and farewell. You don't want some hologram popping up.
Yes.
And it could all go horribly wrong.
So, sorry, can I understand? You would, before you die, record these answers?
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Really weird.
Would you not write something or record a message or a video, or why do you then need to turn up at your own funeral?
And then this particular woman who did it, she engaged in questions from members in the congregation. It's like being in an audience, not a congregation.
Yes, and it would be like, a show.
It's like a reality show.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I hated my childhood. And by the way, I really couldn't stand Auntie Jane. You can imagine all the things.
You could settle a few scores. It could go wrong. It could go
horribly wrong. It's got all the mark of a Mike Leigh play.
Now, let me ask you this. When I studied A-level, I studied Thomas Hardy's Far from the Madding Crowd. Yeah. It's one of the novels, one of the books.
Sergeant Troy, Bathsheba.
Yes, remember all that?
I do.
Yes, yeah. Anyway, it was also a film.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, Hardy's work now comes with a trigger warning, as students are advised that the novelist depicts the cruelty of nature. The students are warned it contains descriptions of dead sheep, which I remember very, very well. the sheep got bloated, they had certain type of clover, and it made their tummies swell. I must be eating the same thing. But anyway, it was they stuck. The solution was to stick a needle, a big knitting needle, into the sheep's stomach, and it punctured.
A lot of Hardy's books were about the toughness of rural life.
Yeah.
And this is all about it. But this university that's done this, doesn't it think the students have ever seen a lamb chop before? Or had roast lamb for lunch or dinner? But they've got to protect them from reading about sheep with distended tummies.
It's not protect them from reading. It's just saying, by the way,
just saying mind
this
your
is
own
what's
business.
to come.
Yeah.
How different is it to like a rating on a movie, I guess, to say, you know, there could be graphic
Hardy is
scenes?
a classic. It's a classic of English literature. And these ridiculous academics are now trying to put the students yet again in cotton wool. The world is going slowly mad.
Yeah.
The political
I get
correctness.
angry with all the rest of us who allow it to happen.
Yeah.
Why don't we just sort of stick two fingers up to them and say, you know, we're not adhering to this, we don't believe in this.
I mean, what next? When 1984, will Orwell be next for these ridiculous academics? These will be white, middle-class do-gooders. That's who's doing this.
Though I went to a football match on Saturday and it should have come with a warning. It was a horror show.
Oh.
Brentford, Man United, it was a horror show.
You lost
25
4-0.
minutes. And I wasn't warned that it would happen.
Yeah. How was the language?
What else have you got there?
How was the language at the football match?
How was the language?
Yeah.
My language.
Did they swear a lot at the football?
No, I was very quiet. I was with the Man United delegation. I'm very well behaved.
Oh, right.
I'm representing the club.
Right.
Yeah, very well behaved.
But what's gone wrong?
You tell me, mate. I wish I knew the answer.
Nothing about football, but I do know this is the worst start for Manchester United for 100 years.
Yeah, OK, enough. Move on.
Sorry, if I
find another subject.
What else are we going to talk about?
We're
going to talk about... look, I talked to the Liz Truss last week at one of the hustings up in near Manchester, and she said she was going to get really tough about these migrant crossings. Not working, is it? They are still crossing in record numbers. Good weather.
20,000 this year.
People watching this program are appalled by this, I can tell you. People who read the Daily Mail are appalled at the impotence of the government.
But you can be appalled, but you're also very frightened by it as well, as in, because no one can see a solution, no one can see an answer. Rwanda's off the table. It's tragic for many of the people involved, but we as a country, we just can't keep affording...
No, we can't.
20,000 a year on top of everybody else's year, on top of people who come into the country in other ways, not just via the channel.
And these people are illegal. They're breaking the law. And then they're put in hotels, they disappear. I think in Australia, they turned the boats back. Why can't we investigate that? We know that's what the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, wanted to do. Apparently the Ministry of Defence are waving their arms. It'll all be because we're still covered by the European Court of Human Rights, because they would throw the book at us if we turn the migrants back. So let's just withdraw from it.
Liz Truss
We've got a Supreme Court, and let them decide.
Rishi Sunak both are committed to continuing the Rwanda policy.
But it's not. But it's going to be bogged down in legal challenges for months and months and months at a huge cost to the taxpayer.
So what would it take for us to withdraw from this European Court of Human Rights?
Well, it's just... What?
You mean if there was political will, we could do it?
If there was political will, we can do it, yeah. If there's enough supporters on the Conservative benches, Labour would oppose it, of course, as would the Lib Dems. It's not linked to the European Union, it has to be said, but it is a European court which seems to think it can still tell us what to do. Why? We've got our own judiciary. It's one of the most admired on the planet. The British judiciary, second to none. The Supreme Court, which told the Prime Minister he'd illegally prorogued Parliament. It's powerful and gutsy, our court system. We do not need to be told what to do by the ECHR.
Do you think that this will cost Priti Patel her job?
She won't be Home Secretary in the first reshuffle, that's for sure. It's a tough job. She, I think, wants to do more, but I think her hands have been tied by civil servants who want to wreck everything. We know she's had a lot of problems with civil servants. And also, the government lawyers will be throwing their hands up in the air. But I think whoever the new Home Secretary is has to say to the Prime Minister, which will be Liz Truss in my view, you've got to let me do this properly. Because people are really angry about this. And it's a big issue in the Red Wall seats, I can tell you.
Let's mention the Conservative Party leadership race just briefly.
Yes, it's so thrilling, isn't it?
Well, interestingly, Labour obviously are coming up with their policy. They're making the announcements today of what they would do to counter energy bills, and they would cap the energy price cap so it can't rise above what it is now. So families won't be paying more than sort of £2,000. Sensible? Unrealistic?
Well, it's not funded, that's the problem. And
they say it's
funded.
funded.
Well, the Institute for Fiscal Studies have said the plan is an illusion. Now, that's a respected think tank. They've got no
They say it works in the short term, but in the long term it could be
Exactly. Whatever happens, what the government's proposing at the moment is not enough. £400 is not enough. But also, I don't see why I'm going to get £400 to help with my gas bill and electric bill, because I can probably afford, I can pay my electric and gas bill. Shouldn't that be going to people who are needier? But if you take people out, is it more complicated and expensive to remove us from the system?
Process,
That's the problem.
I don't think they will be subsidising your bill or my bill or Rosie's bill, but then that makes it even more complicated and complex. For instance, we probably all use different amounts of energy on different things. I mean, if you lived with me, Andrew, you'd be in darkness. I turn out lights everywhere. I like watching the television in darkness. I do. My wife, I might be a bit of a vampire. My wife is lights everywhere. Lights, camera, action, everywhere. And it costs a fortune.
We should live together. Because I have the lights off.
Best idea.
Perhaps we're going to have to stop using our electric toothbrushes, all these sort of things we can do. I mean, do you remember back in the 70s, we had to save energy?
Yeah, there is no will for so many things. There is no will to reduce plastic. I don't think it's my job to recycle plastic. It's the government's job to tell manufacturers stop making it. And I could go on and on and on about so many things. One of the things I would like to go on with, we're talking now about storms. We're talking about rain coming into the country, and this is a problem. And my problem is this: it's the wrong type of rain. Well, it's the wrong type of soil, basically. But these water companies who bring in hose pipe bans and things like that, they don't dig holes in the ground. None of them. Apparently, it's been like 50 years since we last had a reservoir.
There's not been since the great 1976, which was the hottest when we had storm pipes in the street. They haven't built a single reservoir since then in the southeast. Not one. These water companies make an absolute fortune. And the Mail today have looked at the pay packages of the bosses. The boss of Severn Trent Water, if you're watching, she should be ashamed of herself. She's earning £4 million a year, and every day 25% of their water goes down the plug hole.
Yeah.
How can they be paid these sorts of salaries?
That's what's going to happen over the next few days. When the rain comes down, it'll just drain off the land. It will go into rivers, out to the sea, whatever. We can be capturing more of it. I mean, the situation's not good. Climate change is not good. But, I mean, listen, we could be doing more to make the situation easier.
Yeah, and look, they've got a Victorian pipe network, which they're not replacing. They're useless.
Very true. Andrew, lovely talking to you, my friend. As
always.
Pleasure. Thank you. Nice start to Monday morning.
Good to have Ray Lewis on too. What a legend.
Oh, yes. We should have got him singing, but we had to bring you in, so I had to cut that short.
He's better at singing than me, that's for sure.
Well, Eamonn did a couple of renditions earlier. You'll have potentially...
A mouse in old Amsterdam. I saw a mouse.
Here we go.
Where? Under the chair. Under the chair, right there. A little mouse with clogs on. Well, I declare, going clip clippity clop on the chair. And she said to me, "That's not a song." I said, "That was in the charts."
It was, and it was always on Saturday Radio 2. They've always played that
always.
song. Always.
Oh, those were the days.
Those were the days.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll say goodbye to you. Thanks very much for tuning in, for listening and watching.
Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow from 6 a.m, hopefully with fewer mice. But coming up next, it's Tom Harwood and The Briefing, so don't go anywhere.
Got a more unsettled day as there'll be scattered heavy showers and thunderstorms developing across the country. Let's have a look at the details. By midday, the southwest of England's going to have a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be quite heavy and potentially thundery too. It's going to feel quite warm and humid. Across the southeast of England, it's going to be a largely dry day with plenty of hot and hazy sunshine. It won't be long before some scattered thunderstorms develop later on. There's going to be plenty of warm and hazy sunshine across South Wales this lunchtime, but also a scattering of heavy and potentially thundery showers. To the Midlands, and it's going to be hot and humid this lunchtime with plenty of hazy sunshine. There'll also be scattered showers around, some potentially quite heavy and thundery. Some places will stay dry altogether. It's a mixed picture this afternoon across northeast England. It's going to be warm and humid with some sunny spells and scattering showers. In Scotland now, and showers could merge into longer periods of rain across southern Scotland this afternoon. Some of that will be quite heavy at times. It's